Get it started. We have a very exciting and very busy agenda. I will try to keep it on time. That's good. Okay, good morning. I'm so excited about the agenda, so I would love to have more energetic response. So let me try again. Good morning. Yeah, that's good. Okay, I'm Atam Dhawan. Welcome to specifically our guest from outside NJIT. And also thank you everyone, including NJIT colleagues, joining us this morning to the NJIT 2024 Research Institute Centers and Laboratory Showcase, and the special event today with the National Academy of Inventors Forum on sustainable societies. And we started this particular forum 3 years ago and had 5 such workshops and forums on different topical areas, strategic areas, including healthcare innovation, sustainable environment and societies, and the data revolutions, and the advances with technology, translation, entrepreneurship, and commercialization in the past. Today's forum is specifically focused on the advances in material science and engineering. Now I will talk a little bit about it, why we are addressing that particular field today. But before I do that, I would like to request our President Tech Lim to join us at the podium to give you some welcome opening remarks. President Lim.
Thank you, Atam. Good morning. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you to NJIT. For our guests here, welcome to this beautiful, highly inspiring, highly innovative campus. In my opinion, obviously I'm preaching to the choir here. This is the most innovative and entrepreneurial campuses in America. And I've been to a lot of campuses. I've been to Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, Texas, where I was right before this. So believe me, this is one of the most innovative and entrepreneurial campuses in America. And do you know why? It is because of the diversity and also our proximity to New York City. This area, this region, attracts people from all over the world, and people with great ideas, aspiring to do better, and they bring, by osmosis, they'll make it to this campus here. So anyway, welcome to NJIT. Atam, thank you again for putting up this showcase, the Research Centers and Lab Showcase, and also the National Academy of Inventor NJIT Forum. He's been doing this year after year after year, and my gratitude for your leadership in developing NJIT's outstanding NAI chapter. In fact, if you don't know, okay, last year, National Academy of Inventor gave NJIT the inaugural NAI Chapter of Excellence Award. And there are a lot of chapters around the country. And so thank you, Atam, for your leadership, and congratulations to those who are involved here. The NJIT National Academy of Inventor chapter is a very, very important entity, organization at our university, because at its core, NJIT is about innovation. And that's why I teed up the fact that this is, in my opinion, the most innovative and entrepreneurial campuses in America. For those students who are here, how many of you are actually not from New Jersey? Raise your hand. Students. Oh, so how many of you are from New Jersey? Students. Hardly any, right? Well, good and bad news. I guess we should attract more New Jersey students to come and do research. But on the other hand, it proved my point that you are attracted to this region, to this university, and you're here, believe me or not to have vacation for the students. You're here, okay, to gain advanced knowledge so that you can move ahead compared to your peers around the world globally, because we're educating global professionals here, okay? So at its core, NJIT is focused on innovation, and this happens with every new president. I'm at my almost at my second year here. By July 1st, I will be crossing my 2-year term at NJIT, 2-year tenure at NJIT. And with any new president, as some of you who've been around for a while, you're asked to put together a strategic plan. You know, our strategic plan 2025, when I first show up here, still in effect until we change it in a few weeks, is a strong strategic plan, has strong bones, and if not, we won't have gotten to where we are. But it was written before the pandemic, and you all know what happened during the pandemic. And we learned a lot during the pandemic. Okay, now and the silver lining, okay, is that the pandemic propelled us far out into the future, a future that relies a lot on technology, innovation, very entrepreneurial thinking. Of course, I never want to wish for a pandemic. But, you know, this underpinning of the pandemic, okay, is that it creates opportunity for us, and while there are challenges. So we are launching our new strategic plan 2030 in a couple of weeks, once the Board of Trustees formally pass a resolution to endorse it, which I'm sure will, because we have had lots of conversation with them, with the campus community, with our stakeholders, our corporate partners. The strategic plan 2030 of NJIT would be to become an innovation nexus. So a lot of places talk about innovation as part of their strategic plan. In our case, innovation is our strategic plan. The idea of the nexus is that we will become the whole campus, physical, virtual infrastructure, could become the focal point for people, students, collaborators, corporations, executives, engineers from anywhere in the world, ideas, and also actions coalesce to create something that is that would advance, okay, the progress of humanity, makes lives better, makes things easier for us, better healthcare, better education. So that is the strategic plan of 2030 of NJIT, to become the nexus of innovation. The NJIT NAI chapter will be a critical component of this strategic plan as we march towards 2030, because it facilitates innovation among our faculty, among ourselves, and also with other stakeholders outside of NJIT. And it provides, most importantly, mentorship for students. At the end of the day, if you look at the higher education institution, and we have Stevens here, and also Princeton and others, I'm sure you'll agree, our business is students. If you ask Ford Motor Company, what's their business? They'll tell you their business is cars, vehicles, but our business is students. So whatever we do is principally focused on students. So part of our strategic plan 2030, okay, being the nexus of innovation, is to bring all the time, talent, and treasure that we can find, looking through underneath every rock, every leaves, connect it to this campus so that we can better educate our students, better prepare you for your future, and better give you the tools that you need and make you the best version of yourself once you leave here. So that's the idea of the nexus of innovation. And so when we do research here, why? Well, of course, you know, to advance knowledge, create next best gadget, those are all great ideas. But first and foremost, we do research here to educate students. We use research to train students. That's it. You know, I'll tell you a little story. When I was dean of the College of Engineering, long time ago, can't even remember when, but a long time ago, back in Cincinnati, I was a newly minted dean, a faculty member, highly productive, highly decorated in publication, came to me and says, hey, I need a cost share for this proposal. And I said, show me your budget. So I look at the budget and say, oh, you missed something. There are no line item to support graduate student. That would be very common. If you do research, you put graduate student in that list. And immediately he say, oh, I don't have time for that. My goodness. I say, why are you at the University of Cincinnati? You can do research in Los Alamos Research Lab, Ford Research Lab. So, you know, needless to say, I kicked him out of my office and didn't give him a cost share. He never came back and asked for a cost share, because here, our business as students, everything that we do is principally focused on making sure that students are successful. You become the next scientists, engineers, and whatnot, okay, of this nation. So in the NII chapter that we have, every member of the NII chapter here, our faculty are very focused on research. They're very focused not only on research, but also training the next generation researcher, which are our students. The chapter brings researchers, innovators, and representations from NJIT for workshops. We collaborated, and I've been to many of the workshops that Atam put together. Fabulous. I love to see the collaboration. And for our friends from Stevens and Princeton, this collaboration is necessity today. I tell our faculty, it's not publish or perish, it's collaborate or you perish, so to speak. So I know that we have our guest speaker from NSF, and I'm sure Dr. Pradeep Fuller, he's going to be online later. He would agree with me that collaboration is key. In fact, a lot of the NSF, NIH, and federal grants require collaboration, require teamwork as well. Additionally, the chapter also, and this is somewhat unique here, not the only school that does it, but relatively unique here, is that the NII chapter works through the Office of Research, works with undergraduate students to push them along in the research direction. So we have an undergraduate summer research program that is very vibrant. Tom, how many students participated last year? 100? 120 undergraduate students participate in summer research. Some of them actually are from high school too, that participate in our research. That's separate. So in addition to 120, we have high school coming to campus to experience research, not mock research, but true research. They actually publish, they work with our faculty, and this is great because learning is all about research, in my opinion. It's not about sitting in a classroom listening to a lecture. It's about explore, invent, figure out how things work. Again, one last thing I'm going to mention and pass it back to Tom here. None of these that I mentioned are possible without the incredible work and the dedication of the NII chapter members here today, and also the faculty members and students. For that, I commend, I congratulate, and I thank all of you for all that you do for NAI, for NJIT, and for the entire higher ed community as a whole. I hope you will all enjoy this forum and inspired by the brilliant work of the researchers and inventors you will hear today. They are truly, truly impressive. Year after year, my mind was blown away on the kind of things that our students get involved in. Thinking back my career almost 40 years ago, when I was a student, I don't think I could get into NJIT. I don't think I could be in a position to do the kind of research that you embark on. So congratulations. This is a well-deserved recognition. And for students, please continue to make full use of all the apparatus and assets that we have here on this campus to experience research. Thank you, Atam. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you so much. Okay, actually, I have it different. All right, so I'm going to use this mic. All right. Okay, so thank you so much, President Lim, for a very inspiring talk, but also the remarks that you brought us today, which are so relevant and so impactful and inspiring that the innovation nexus at NJIT is what we all are working together for. It's very important to see that the role of the academic universities have been changing and evolving in terms of not only educating the future workforce or training the future leaders of our society, but also go beyond the discovery of knowledge in our research and become a research and innovation engine for translation of the research productivity from laboratory to market towards addressing the use-inspired market needs. And that's what we are going to focus today. So I have a couple of slides over here, if you could put over there to set the stage. And then we will have our distinguished keynote speaker, Dr. Pradeep Phule, the program director at the NSF Directorate of Technology and Innovation Partnerships for the Accelerating Research Translation, in short, ART program, joining us remotely. He's a very, very busy person, and I'm so grateful for him that he is giving us some time to share his vision today. But I will introduce him in a few minutes, but I just wanted to share some thoughts with you. So first of all, echoing what Dr. Lim said, that NJIT 2030 strategic plan is towards creating innovation nexus at NJIT, linking all our assets, internal and external, at the regional, at the national level, to not only embed them, the innovation engaged communities inside as well as the outside of our NJIT, in order to make sure that we bring innovation in all functions and a spectrum of the academic enterprise, including the research, innovation, and technology translational entrepreneurship enterprise. So if you look into this particular slide, the bottom part is related to the research, innovation, and technology entrepreneurship through accelerating the translation of the novel ideas from the research lab to the market, which we are going to focus specifically in the area of material science and engineering. Why material science and engineering? So if I could say so, and most of you, if not all, would agree with me, that all the technological advances that have revolutionized the society and continue to revolutionize currently and the future trends are based on two enablers, materials and data. And there is an intersection of the materials and data, which we will talk in a minute. But if you look into the healthcare innovation, I work in diagnostic radiology and medical imaging. I could not imagine today's healthcare without diagnostic imaging. Neither would you. And what has enabled that? This novel materials of the detectors over there. Without that, there's no medical imaging, right? The second area is environment, society. You know, whether we are looking into the building materials and concrete to reduce the carbon footprint, or looking into the novel energetic materials, which you are going to hear today, in order to reduce the carbon footprints again, nuclear energy, fusion energy, or you are looking into the water remediation, or you are looking into the PFAS contamination. All the environmental society, once you drill down to the core, it originates from the innovation in material science and engineering. And then it finds its way towards the use-inspired application needs for the translation of the technological solution for societal benefits. And the third, specifically, is the data revolution. Today, you cannot live 10 minutes, I challenge you, without using the data. You cannot, right? Whether you are banking, or you are doing anything, or you are working on a machine learning models. So just a little bit perspective, machine learning and artificial intelligence not started yesterday. You know, it has its mathematical foundational roots for artificial neural networks, genetic algorithm, evolutionary computing, at least over 3 decades. In early 90s, I was doing at University of Cincinnati the machine learning, random walk method models, and genetic algorithm for computer-aided diagnostic systems. What was not being done, even at that particular time, with rule-based system and the Lisp languages for frame-based hierarchical knowledge-based system, is that the compute power was not there. The semiconductor chips, you know, they were big kind of compute engines at the supercomputers, power in order to run those data-intensive machine learning models. Today, you can have that power in your pocket. You know, So that has enabled the data analytics and accelerate the use of these applications towards whether they are energy fusion, nanotechnology, or they are the things related to can you stop this automatic advance? Or they are related to the healthcare tissue engineering. And we saw in the past 3 years since pandemic, the mRNA technology. So anything that you cut across, you will see the use of the materials and the data revolution embedded to it. So one thing that I wanted to share is that in the discovery of the knowledge, if you look into this particular graph for past few years, the number of the publication in material and science and engineering has escalated for the right reasons, because we have so many unmet needs for societal and the technological impact that we need to address through the novel materials and advances. And one of the things that you could see, whether they are healthcare or any particular application, whether they are 1D, 2D, or 3D materials, the 72% on the red graph over there shows that they are multidisciplinary subject areas. So they are given by the subject area. So we are looking at the system level, not just the materials in the lab, but how it is applied through the translation of the technology of the devices in order to serve that unmet need in the society. So when you look into some of those particular applications, they are everywhere: industry, societal, your banking, your environmental, your healthcare, and of course, enabling the future of the cyber infrastructure. So we go over there, and this is a very interesting slide. What happened here? This is a very interesting slide. So now we are running out of the space on a semiconductor chips. We all know about that. There's no more transistors or PN junctions to fit onto the silicon wafer. So we're looking into the quantum computing, which is the next horizon and the revolution in material science and engineering. So this particular market share is very interesting in order to figure it out that, okay, even though it says 106 billion by 2040, but the real point is on the bottom left, which says $1.27 trillion by 2030, the market economic value proposition. And look into the right side of that left image, 44,000 publications in quantum computing in 2022 alone, and about 1,600 new patents. That is the driving force of the innovation, which is moving the quantum into many of the applications. And if we succeed in that quantum science and information system, it is going to revolutionize from cyber computing to the cybersecurity to the healthcare applications and the devices that you do for environmental and the medical sensors. Of course, it has to intersect with the data analytic approaches, which is the artificial intelligence. And who is enabling the artificial intelligence? Those GPUs and those semiconductor chips, which is projected to be over $2.5 trillion market share by 2032. So we have a lot of excitement coming our way, and that brings the core of the agenda today, that we need to look into the materials, we need to look into the advances in the data revolution and the intersection of the materials and the compute power to generate artificial intelligence and machine learning models, which will help us to introduce new materials and bringing new technologies to the translation stage and accelerating that particular translation to the market for use-inspired unmet applications for societal benefit, for economic impact, and for technology impact as well. And that is the introduction to our our keynote speaker, who has been pioneer, not only a researcher, an outstanding internationally known researcher in material science and engineering, but a very visionary, phenomenal leader in bringing the acceleration of the research translation into the academic world through the NSF Directorate, Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships. So this is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Pradeep Phule, and he would be joining us remotely. Is he there? Okay, Dr. Phule, please. So everybody, please join me in welcoming Dr. Phule.
Thank you. Thank you, Atam. I hope you guys can hear me. Just want to make sure.
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Perfect.
Dr. Phule, we have your presentation over here if you would like.
Give me one second.
Okay.
Okay, good. Are you able to see my view graphs? Can you see my view graphs?
No.
Let me try again one more time. Can you see it now? Brian, can you see my view graphs?
Yeah, yes, we can see it now.
Okay, perfect. All right, sounds good. So good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay, as well as you can see my view graphs. My name is Pradeep Phule. As Atam mentioned before, I am at NSF, National Science Foundation, in the Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships Directorate. Arvind Gyanchandani, who is leading this directorate, along with Gracie Narcho, and I work with Tyagananda Gopal, who is the division director for the ITE division within the TIP Directorate. TIP Directorate, we just celebrated our second birthday, and we are very, very happy with the number of programs that we launched recently. So I'm here. First of all, I want to thank you, Atam, for this invitation to speak to you. Both not only, I would like to talk to you not only as a program director here who has led this effort to launch the Accelerating Research Translation or ART program, which is by and large I'll be talking to you about. But I'm also very pleased to join this forum that NJIT has coordinated with NAI, especially devoted to sustainable societies and how materials can play a major role to help us achieve our goals for sustainability. And I'm doing so in my background and experience as a materials scientist as well. So I'm very, very pleased, very happy to be here. So I'm just going to give you some highlights of the art program, so you have a slightly better understanding of how the art program is not only important for universities like NJIT, of course, collaborating with Princeton. Dr. Lim, President Lim, you mentioned in his remarks that collaborate or perish, and that is very, very true. And an art program, as I will articulate, looks after or looks at very strong collaborations and also the word partnerships. I should point out to you that the word partnerships is in the name of our directorate, which is Technology Innovation and Partnerships. So this is my team, which is so it's not just me. Obviously, there are many people across the foundation. Nina Mangaona is one of my key partners, program director Dan Miranda, as well as Wei Wei Wang, and many others have really helped me launch this particular program. So let me come to you and kind of give you some high level uh, picture with respect to art. So what we are really trying to do in art is really build the capacity and infrastructure for translational research at institutes of higher education, just like NJIT. That is number one goal. So then the second goal is really to get this notion, create some alternative pathways for graduate students. I noticed you have a session in which graduate students would be presenting, and that's fantastic. I saw some of the bios of those students, and it's just very, very motivating to see them engaged so that they can begin to think about how they could be entrepreneurs, how they could be contributing to make economic impact, societal impact. And so that certainly is part of the goal for art program. We also want to see a larger increase in research translation, translational research projects that are pursued by institutes of higher education like NJIT across all scientific disciplines, not just one or two. So those are kind of the bigger picture for the art program. And here is kind of some of the key points that I want to make in terms of translational research as well as tech transfer. So when we talk about research translation, it is not necessarily simply launching a new startups or entrepreneurship. Those things are certainly part of it. But I think one of the things I would say to you is that art program is not simply a tech transfer program. Tech transfer is part of art, but that's not it. So we are also very passionate, very focused on how can some of these projects can lead to societal impact. So in that sense, we view tech transfer in a more holistic, in a more expansive definition, that it is not just about entrepreneurship, patents, IP licensing, and all of those things. They're certainly part of it, but it is also about engaged scholarship, social entrepreneurship, shared knowledge, platforms, so that we can begin to make a tangible difference that would be for our citizens, for our taxpayers. So I just want to make that clear that in addition to the classical definition of tech transfer, we take this more expansive view of what does it mean to have an impact on the society. And again, if you look at what the art program really tries to do, is we try to create an interconnected community of translation practitioners. That is kind of the high level goal for translation. So right now, what we see is more or less some faculty at institutions trying to do translational research, but we really want to see from the leadership, and I'm so glad Dr. Lim, your provost, as well as many other, board of trustees. I had another meeting when Atam, you launched your Center for Translational Research a few weeks back. I'm very, very pleased to see that very strong and robust support from the top leadership, as well as I met a number of your faculty when we had the art meeting in Washington here at NSF a few weeks back again. So I'm very, very pleased to see that you have this messaging around research translation, that it becomes part of what your overall academic culture is on at NJIT campus, as well as how valuable this is to NJIT and the state of New Jersey in general. So here is what we are trying to do. Most of you are probably in engineering or scientific disciplines. On the x-axis, what you have is overall research at an institution or at any institution. And then you have what I would call translational activities or research translation. And we deliberately have not put any scales on this, right? So overall research can be measured by a number of factors, including research expenditures. Similarly, translational activities could be measured by industry university interactions, royalty income from licenses, number of startups. And again, all those things are very, very valid measure for what translational activities are. So what you see here is really institutions that, say, for example, might belong to this blue ellipse. So those are low levels of research, low translation. Those will become part of what we are trying to do under art sometime down the road. Right now, we are focused on institutes like NJIT, where there is a real opportunity because you have a high volume of research, but relatively low translation. Then you have institutions that are in the green ellipse. So those are institutions that already have very robust translational ecosystems. They have very strong, high volume of research accompanied by very high level of translation. So really the goal for art really is for us to see how we can go. So the art program, this vector that you see going from those golden ellipse to the green ellipse, is really try to elevate the level of translational activities on these campuses that are funded through art, and they would move towards that green ellipse. Now, I fully recognize that these things don't happen overnight. So by design, our expectation is our time frame for this is at least we can begin to see a noticeable difference in about 5 years. So art program is really intended to move institutions towards from a relatively low level of activity to much more in terms of what we see is a tangible effort to move them towards this green ellipse. And the institutions in green ellipse, for example, NJIT is partnering with Princeton. Dr. Lim mentioned that before in his remarks, that these kinds of collaborative relationships are absolutely important overall. But really, the art program requires universities that have been awarded the art funding to really partner with what we have called as mentoring institutions. So that is kind of a very unique feature for art program. To this date, we have, just to give you a scale, we have invested more than $100 million. Each art award is about $6 million. It is a cooperative agreement, and we have made about 18 such awards across the entire United States. This is a graphical representation of where our awardees are. And I'm very pleased that NJIT under Atham's leadership is really part of this. So I'm very, very pleased that NJIT is part of this, along with mentoring institution is Princeton. Out of these 18 institutions, you can also see they come from very different geographies within the country. And this is very important because we really believe at NSF and TIP Directorate, and I personally believe that innovation happens everywhere. It's not simply along the coast. So it's not simply one or two parts of the country, but it happens everywhere. And we really are very proud to say that out of 18 institutions, 9 are from EPSCoR jurisdictions. We are also very proud to point out that 7 of these awards are being led by women PI. So diversity is again very, very key. Dr. Lim, you mentioned this in your remarks that NJIT is a very diverse institution, and we really want to celebrate that diversity as part of the art award. So I'm very strongly encouraged by the level of diversity that exists currently on the art team that NJIT has put together under the leadership of Dr. Dhawan. So I'm not going to go through this entire list of all the institutions, but you can see from NJIT to a number of other institutions, George Mason, Florida State, UMass, Illinois Tech, IIT. So again, there are all kinds of institutions here. Just like NJIT, we have some that are institutes of technology, so tech-centric, as well as we have some state universities like Florida State, University of Alabama, as well as we have private institutions like Lehigh and IIT Chicago. We have some R1s, we have R2. So the art program really looks at the capacity and the potential to grow translational at a very high level within the next 5 to 10 years. I mentioned mentoring institutions. So you can see again, Princeton is a mentoring institution. We have many others, including MIT, University of Florida, Michigan, Carnegie Mellon, and so on. Again, University of Chicago. I'm not going to read this entire list, but art program requires or has strongly encouraged, and it will require this partnership between the awardee institution and the mentoring institution. One of the other things we have emphasized with the mentoring institutions is that they are not going to simply say, for example, Princeton is not going to simply say to NJIT, this is what we do at Princeton, this is what you should do. That's not how the mentoring is supposed to work. Princeton University will work with NJIT, work with number of partners, and figure out use their expertise to really share with NJIT as to what might be the best thing for NJIT in terms of scaling translation. That is the role for the mentoring institutions. So I hope that gives you kind of a flavor for what the art or accelerating research program is all about. We would be announcing art, the next solicitation very soon. So please stay tuned to that. If there are other people, other partners that you would like to get them involved or respond to the next funding opportunity that would be coming up soon. Let me turn my attention to the opportunity I see as a material scientist with more than 35 years of experience as a materials scientist. I personally think that NJIT, as well as many other institutions, have a very great opportunity to really use art as a platform to really scale translation of materials research from lab to market and really come up with ideas, innovations that would really be very, very impactful in terms of societal impact as well as economic impact. By definition, I don't have to convince most people in this audience that of all the disciplines, materials research, material science and engineering in particular is very, very kind of naturally suited for translation. A lot of what we do is clearly use inspired. Dr. Dhawan spoke about his research in imaging for medical applications. And if it were not for piezoelectric materials like PZT and many other PVDF, we would not have ultrasound imaging, the state of the ultrasound imaging that you see here. I have personally worked with piezoelectric materials, many other smart materials, and I can assure you that the medical devices that you see for ultrasound imaging today, how miniaturized they are, how good the resolution is, those things will simply not be possible without significant advances in materials research, in this particular case, piezoelectric ceramics, piezoelectric polymers, and so on. And I could give you many such examples of how materials research is naturally tuned into opportunities for creating translation. The other thing I'll point out, which is right now, it's really a very, very great time, a very good time, I would say, for translating materials research from lab to market and transition them into practice. That is because we seek a very strong convergence between different fields. So, for example, Atam, you spoke about machine learning and artificial intelligence, advances simply in high performance computing, right? For material simulations, it is a phenomenal opportunity, in my view, for material scientists to really use some of these tools to really advance the speed and scale for translation of new materials, new discoveries. We no longer, just like Atam, I graduated, I got my PhD in 1989, so a long time back. Uh, and in my undergraduate and graduate days, I remember people had to look at every single material. If you were doing metals or alloys, you had to look at the time temperature transformation diagram, look at the microstructure, and then try to see if something is going to work. With the power that we have today with artificial intelligence, machine learning, some of those things can be accelerated enormously. The third thing I'll point out is that the impact that we can create with the advancement in new materials in terms of clean water, clean energy, clean air, sustainability, fighting climate change, carbon capture technologies, fuel cells. There are so many opportunities, electric vehicles, there are battery technologies, there are so many advances that can be made with advancing the right materials into the marketplace. Okay, so in my view, a program like ART, as well as which has several opportunities for places like NJIT to really use it as a platform to advance your research in materials science and engineering. Now, having said that, I'm also very aware that transitioning materials into marketplace is tough. Okay, and this is because the time constant is much longer. Atam, you talked about quantum computing. Certainly, there is an opportunity, but prior to that, all of us know about all the advances that have been made in VLSI, in the GPUs that you see today. Companies like NVIDIA and Intel and many others, Micron Technologies, the advances they made, all of them are because of material science. But we also have to remember that transistor was invented, PN junction was invented close to 1947, 48, and it took many, many decades to come to the scaling down and the number of billions of transistors that we can have on chips. So it's always a long journey, right? So that's point number one. The time constants are much longer in terms of transitioning advanced materials into marketplaces, right? So that's point number one. Point number two is very often just because a material has a better piezoelectric, D33 coefficient, or has a better Young's modulus, or better elasticity, or what have you, doesn't mean it will transition to practice. There are many other constraints in terms of the ability to manufacture material at scale. There are enormous cost pressures. Can we do that affordably? So I saw some of the presentations on solar cells, photovoltaic type materials. Again, the cost pressures to kind of make those transitions happen in a timely fashion at scale, there are a lot of those challenges. And in certain areas, we have geopolitical challenges, for example, critical minerals that go into a number of technologies that are coming up. There are supply chain issues. But despite of these challenges that we face, I really think that we have great opportunities for the material science and engineering community to really leverage some of the advances in high performance computing, quantum computing, uh, to advance quantum computing itself in terms of different types of superconducting qubits. Again, there are tremendous opportunities. I talked to you about earlier about using AI, machine learning to accelerate this process, as well as the advances we have seen in the last 10, 15, 20 years in techniques like additive manufacturing. So there are tremendous opportunities for all of you to build the ecosystems that includes education and training for faculty to think more on these lines and think about entrepreneurship, get involved. We art programs allows funding of several what we have called as seed translational research projects. Those are aimed at de-risking so that industry partners can be brought in at a much earlier stage. And really, we are also hoping very much that some of our students, undergraduate students, graduate students, they would be involved in the art program as well. And because they would be our next generation of entrepreneurs, it is my every expectation that many of them will be looking at creating jobs and not seeking jobs. So I think that is kind of one of my expectations. So with that, I want to close here, again, point out to you that we are very excited about the art program. We have invested quite a bit of funding into this, and we would be continuing this program with equal levels of passion, energy, and investments. And look, we are very much looking forward to working with all our awardee institutions and way beyond. So Atam, with that, I want to thank Dr. Lim. I want to thank you. I want to thank all of you in the attendees list, and I wish you the very best. You guys have tremendous potential at NJIT, so I wish you well. And again, thank you for your time, the privilege of your time in hearing my remarks today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Phule. This is very, very inspiring and insightful talk, and the remarks that you made for advancing the state of the art and future technologies in material science and engineering and their translation from lab to market. I must reiterate that I am very, very grateful to your leadership and the leadership of your colleagues at the Technology, Innovation, and Partnership Directorate to develop the pathways to facilitate the research translation in academia to market. This couldn't be a better time because we're just coming out of the pandemic, and we learned this very, very good lesson, great lesson in my belief, because when I was doing my first invention for dermatoscopy, I was told that it will take 12 to 13 years, if I am successful, to bring it into the hands of dermatologists. And I couldn't understand that at all. I had Alan Cormack as my external advisor, who was a Nobel laureate, and he told me that. And I couldn't understand. And I went through the struggles with the clinical trials, regulatory components, insurance regulation and acceptance and everything. And by golly, it was 13 years that before that a startup company made it into the medical world. What pandemic told us with the mRNA technology, because that was not developed in 2020, that was developed about a decade ago, but it was just sitting there, right? But crisis is the mother of invention, right? Or accelerating the invention. So we got to the point where within a few months, we went through all of those three things that you pointed out. We created the feasibility of accepting and adopting that particular technology through emergency use authorization to the same agency, FDA, that has been skeptical in accepting and authorizing that particular technology in medical domain. But we also went, the second most important point that you made, at large scale manufacturing and the distribution logistics so that it can reach to the people for societal benefits. That acceleration happened in unprecedented way. So the bottom line is that it can be done. What it can be done is through the programs that the NSF has taken the leadership and your leadership in order to make that happen, and giving the charge to the academic institutions that they are a part of the innovation engine, not just publishing and let somebody else take care of it. So I'm very, very grateful to you. Do you have questions from the audience? Judith Sheft, do we have the mic? Oh, okay. All right. So Dr. Fuller, we have a question from Judith Shaft. She is the Executive Director of New Jersey Commission of Science, Innovation, and Technology.
So thank you for a really very inspiring talk about the art program. As I look at our New Jersey higher education landscape, in addition to our R1 and R2 institutions, we have a number of schools who are in that emerging research category, down maybe what you would have had the blue on the left. And I'm wondering, is there a way for us to pull them together in sort of a joint possible art application where they're together, they've got perhaps sufficient research across a multiplicity of multiple institutions that might make sense for us to apply for an art application in the next cycle? What are your thoughts about us thinking about our ecosystem in that perspective?
Yeah, thank you, Judith. And this is something that's very much on my mind. So what you will see is, while as art currently, the way we have structured the program right now, it is one institution, and like NJIT, and then of course we have a mentoring institution. But our intent, and we are not ready to release this or announce this publicly yet, but we are taking steps so that our intent is to bring those institutions that are in that blue ellipse, because we really want not only NJIT, and there are many other institutions in the state of New Jersey, right, which are in that blue ellipse, right? That means they have relatively low research and low and not surprisingly low levels of translation, but I really think innovation happens everywhere. I think I mentioned that, right? So now, at the same time, these are the institutions that cannot afford, it's not economical for them to invest, into a tech transfer office, invest into a lot of resources. So our idea is to create, some kind of you can call it a virtual hybrid, tech transfer office, right? We are taking steps to announce some funding opportunities like that, in which they would not be ultimately, they will have a resource that they can tap into. So that is what I would say at this stage. So I'm very, very aware of it, and it is always a matter of how do we make it happen. So thank you for that question, and please stay tuned as some things will be coming up on these lines.
Thank you. One more quick question. This is Chris. You introduce yourself.
Chris Snyder from Stevens Institute of Technology. I'm the tech transfer director there. Obviously, with translation, one key element is participation from industry. Every NSF grant that comes out, it's important to have a commercialization plan and a plan for how we'll work with industry. It's often the case, though, that industry wants kind of a predictable plan for what happens to intellectual property, in the course of that research, and what licensing terms would look like in order to commercialize that. But there are certain limitations that universities and other research institutions have due to the fact that they're a 501c3, and they have to get market rate for intellectual property. And so that tension often has to be worked through. And I'm just curious, from the NSF's perspective, what is the ideal relationship with regard to how intellectual property is shared and commercialized? What should the a consideration that goes back to research institutions look like, and what should those agreements look like from an ideal perspective, from the NSF's perspective?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. And I've been to Stevens campus as well. It's a very nice campus. my son played volleyball, so we came for the volleyball tournament at Stevens. So again, and I know several of your faculty at Stevens as well. So here is the thing, right? So NSF really doesn't take a position as such as to how, what the IP policies should be at a given, whether it's Stevens or NJIT or Princeton. We do not take any position. But I think really the goal for programs like ART or Engines program that has come out of TIP and many other programs, right? Our goal is really to see what is the best way, so that there are, it's beneficial to the university. Clearly, we don't want university to lose out on the, any kind of economic benefits, right, or credits that are due. But at the same time, we also think that it's for the industry. Each industry partnership is going to be different. So we really want to see more and more policies that would really facilitate the transfer, the knowledge transfer, the technology transfer. So whatever it takes. Again, there is no one call does it all kind of thing here, because each invention is different, each IP situation is different. But really, what I would say to you is within ART, what we have tried to do is we have this idea that we will have seed translational research projects, right? They can de-risk, right? The technology that a faculty members, a group of faculty might be working on. So really their aim, you can almost think of them in the same way you would think about SBIR, STTR funding, which is non-dilutive, it doesn't dilute, right? So similar concept, but it really makes it attractive. It really de-risk from an industry perspective. They are going into it with much more greater degree of certainty as to what will potentially come out of it, as opposed to asking them for funding to de-risk what is going on. So I think that's one way I would say we want to increase industry university partnerships. But again, every industry is different, every university is different, and every IP situation is different.
All right. Thank you very much. Let's thank Dr. Fulay for his great talk and
Thank
also
you.
for his time. Thank you very much for taking time from your very, very busy schedule. And I'm
Thank
sure
you.
that we will have more communication, but also as I made the invitation in the past, but I also reiterating that we would love to have you at campus here at NJIT. We will bring Rutgers, Princeton, Stevens, and Montclair and Robin together. So
Absolutely.
you will have a good opportunity to meet with New Jersey IHE whenever your schedule permits.
Absolutely. We'll make it happen. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
So it's time for introducing our distinguished panel. I can't believe the combined intellectual leadership and vision that this particular panel is just about to project to us. It is amazing, and I'm so grateful to every panelist agreeing to come and join us and share their vision with us. So first, Ms. Judith Shaft is the Executive Director of New Jersey Commission of Science and Technology. And Judith and I have worked, because Judith used to work at NJIT, right about the time when I came and joined NJIT, and she was a very stimulating leader in innovation, translation, and commercialization. We were not using the word translation at that particular time, but she was director of the IP and commercialization. She continues to take a next step in the leadership at the state level for stimulating academic industrial collaboration and encouraging and supporting entrepreneurs and inventors. So the state leadership as a stakeholder is so critical in the translational research. and entrepreneurship. So I'm very grateful that she has joined us. By the way, that these are so accomplished people that I will take another hour to introduce and read their biographical sketches, so I'm not going to do that, so I apologize in advance that I'm just highlighting, some of the things that you do for us. Judith was a co-chair in Governor Murphy's Transition Advisory Committee for Technology, Government, and Innovation. Let's welcome Judith Sheft, and she is going to moderate this panel discussion. The next is Dr. Emily Carter, Gerhard Edingler Professor of Energy and the Environment and Professor of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, the Edlinger Center for Energy and the Environment and Applied and Computational Mathematics at Princeton University. She is also the Senior Strategic Advisor and Associate Laboratory Director for Applied Materials and Sustainability Sciences and a member of the Executive Management Team at the Princeton Plasma Physical Laboratory, a Department of Energy National Lab. She has been previously with UCLA, rising through the chemistry and biochemistry faculty ranks, and then later became at Princeton the founding director of the Princeton's Edlinger Center for Energy and Environment from 2010 and to 2016, before being appointed at Princeton's Dean of the School of Engineering and Applied Science in 2016. And then went back to UCLA as its executive vice chancellor and provost and the distinguished professor of chemical and biomolecular engineering. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's welcome Dr. Carter. And the next is Dr. Deirdre O'Carroll, is associate professor in the Department of Material Science and Engineering and Chemistry and Chemical Biology at Rutgers University. She is a recipient of a Marie Curie International Fellowship, National Science Foundation Career Award, and an ACS Young Investigator Award in Polymer Material Science and Engineering, and a SFI Future Research Leader Award. She also serves as an associate editor for the journal ACS Applied Optical Materials and as a member of the editorial board for APL Photonics. We are very pleased to have you, Dr. Carroll. Let's join us in thanking and welcoming her. The next is our own distinguished professor and associate chair of graduate studies at the Otto York Department of Chemical and Material Engineering at New Jersey Institute of Technology, Dr. Edward Dreesen. He received his MS in molecular physics and PhD in applied sciences in Odessa University, Ukraine. He serves as an associate editor for the International Journal of Energetic Materials and Chemical Propulsion as a member of the International Editorial Council of the Combustion, Explosions, and Shock Waves, and as a member of the editorial board for the International Journal of Self-Propagating High-Temperature Synthesis. Let's welcome Dr. Dreesen. And it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Govi Rao. Govi and I have been working for at least 12, 13 years together on a different role. Mr. Rao is a CEO and the founder of the Phase Change Solution, and a company that is looking into reducing the carbon footprints through the use of the novel material. They also have a table over here, just in case in the showcase you would like to know more about the so exciting novel materials that they are using in order to reduce the energy consumption in HVAC. Govi serves on several boards, including the undergraduate research and innovation at NJIT, and has been a very successful serial entrepreneur, built several of the companies in the past and brought them to fruition, including Noveda Technologies. He also held several leadership roles at Philips, including the Vice President for Business Creation and Brand, where he was responsible for product management, strategic marketing, branding, and sustainability. So he knows all about sustainability of the effort for the translation to the entrepreneurship and commercialization. Let's welcome Mr. Govi Rao. And our next, we already talked about the importance of the tech transfer in the translation of the research for entrepreneurship and commercialization. So I'm very pleased and grateful to Christopher Snyder from Stevens Technologies, the director of the tech transfer and commercialization over there, has more than 16 years of experience in moving technologies from lab to commercial success. Chris has negotiated dozens of licenses and the development agreements, advised and developed market strategies for a startup, and worked with industry stakeholders to identify product market fit to numerous technology. Let's join me in welcoming Christopher Snyder. And it's all yours, Judith.
Sure. Thank you. Well, it has really been an exciting morning so far, just hearing some of the comments both from Atam, President Lim, and our colleague from the National Science Foundation. But I want to set things a little bit in context as we move into hearing some remarks from our panelists. The first question is, why do we want these new materials? And we've heard about some of the why in terms of climate things. We want things smaller, faster, cheaper, safer, and that is going to ultimately define somewhat of the what we want these materials to be able to be. And then the next question is, how do we get there? How do we take what we want and figure out a way to work together? So some of the broad trends that I want to comment on, which have been things that we've heard before, is it is very much interdisciplinary sets of activities. It's physics, it's chemists, it's data scientists, it's biology, it's all of these things together. It's not a single discipline. So you need to be able to work cross-discipline, which also means you need to be able to figure out how can I communicate between different disciplines who may have different languages and different ways of doing things. Adam mentioned some of the challenges during COVID. We want things to happen faster, so we cannot take 30 years, 25 years to move things from lab into commercial application. So we need to figure out new mechanisms for being able to do things faster. And some of these mechanisms, many of you in technology transfer might have seen this sort of linear model of you've got the invention and it kind of moves through this nice process and voila, there's a product that someone is working with. Things don't happen in a linear process. They move forward, they cycle back a little bit. I see a colleague, a friend of mine from the Martin Tuckman School of Management, Michael Ehrlich, who talk about pirouetting, pivoting, turning, changing, and you need to be able to address all of those kinds of challenges. And these collaborations that we are seeing today are enormous. It's not just one faculty member in physics working with somebody in a chemistry department. I spent my summer vacation pulling together with a number of other academic proposals for the National Science Foundation and federal EDA Tech Hubs proposals. Those proposals were teams of 70 institutions, government, academia, industry, and you're trying to figure out how do I get all of these people to play together so it's not only what is it you want to do and how am I going to do it, it's what's the governance to ensure that you've got the trust to be able to move these things along. And you've seen that the federal government is pouring massive, massive amounts of money into R&D that academics and others can take advantage of. Yesterday, there was a huge announcement about the amount of funding that Intel is going to be getting for some of their semiconductor activity, for some of the work that they're going to be doing in terms of standing up new manufacturing facilities, but it also involves research and development, workforce training, educational opportunities for our students. And when we think about the New Jersey ecosystem, my last comment is we've got a range of academic institutions from our R1s and our R2s, our emerging research institutions, and we want them all to be able to come together and have opportunities to collaborate. And my one quick question or comment is we have a website called Research with New Jersey that the Commission manages, which is a way to help find collaboration partners at our other institutions to help drive these activities forward. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the panelists, so each have some time for some prepared remarks, and then we'll come back and have some dialogue with them. And so our first panelist, Emily Carter.
Thank you. There needs to be an advancer that I was told would be here. You can put up my slides. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, where's the?
Just trying to get access.
Yeah, the clicker.
The big green.
Right. Okay. It's not obvious that my slide deck is up, though. Are my slides out already?
No, it's not loaded yet.
Okay.
They're just loading.
Give them.
Okay.
You can see it.
There we go. Okay, except that's not the right one. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I'm here not specifically representing Princeton University, but representing the Princeton Plasma Physics Lab, which is is one of 17 national labs that the Department of Energy runs. Princeton manages and operates it. And I have been, for the last couple of years, standing up a new directorate at the Princeton Plasma Physics Lab that is focused on applied materials and sustainability science beyond fusion energy. So the Princeton Plasma Physics Lab, and you can see an overhead shot of it, is, in fact, has been for 70 years focused on physics and engineering related to bringing fusion energy into the world. But it recognized a number of years ago, the current director in particular, that there were opportunities in what's called the low temperature plasma space, which I'll show you in just a second, to contribute, perhaps much sooner than bringing fusion electricity to the grid, contribute the knowledge and the skill set of the people at the lab. So just to point out the word plasma, which probably most of you already in this audience know, it's an ionized gas, and these are examples of plasmas that you can see. Obviously, the sun is undergoing fusion reactions all the time. It's made up of a very dense plasma. Next to the sun, and this is at the top, is actually a fusion experiment. And then you see the aurora borealis, you see lightning, you see compact fluorescence, and you see neon signs. These are all examples of plasmas at very, very different temperatures. The lab's focus, as I mentioned, of course, has been, and its number one goal is to produce fusion electricity this century. But what we have done more recently is to diversify into these new areas that I will talk about related to microelectronics. We heard already from Atam's introductory remarks how important both microelectronics and quantum information is, and plasmas play a central role there. Sustainability sciences, obviously we've talked a bit about the importance of sustainability. The strengths of the lab are skill sets involving, of course, plasma science, but also computational science, in studying very complex phenomena, and engineering, large-scale engineering, as well as in situ diagnostics and analysis. So in terms of applied materials and sustainability sciences, the reason that the lab is diversifying is because of national needs and because of the strengths that we can bring to bear on those. So it includes, for example, the fact that there is a huge emphasis now on onshoring the work we do and the development we do in information technology. That has become critical. Everyone saw during the pandemic how hard it was to get certain kinds of computer chips, supply chain issues. And that really led to the CHIPS and Science Act being passed by the US Congress. And so in the applied materials science space, we have efforts in microelectronics and in quantum sensing and devices, because these particular areas, the manufacturing of both microelectronics chips as well as a particular focus that we have on using diamond as a platform, both of those areas require the use of plasmas to grow and to etch and to precisely synthesize the materials that are needed. With respect to sustainability, when I first came back to Princeton and the lab, what I recognized is that there was an opportunity for the lab to participate in responding to what I like to refer to as the sins of the past, namely all the CO2 that we've emitted to the atmosphere, and how we think about how we can contribute to carbon capture, utilization, and sequestration, and potentially, if necessary, climate interventions such as solar radiation management. And then also thinking beyond the sins of the past to what we can do to contribute to moving on to a sustainable path for a 21st century civilization. And that's how do we think about getting to zero or negative carbon emission technologies. And in particular, what we're focusing on, again, is manufacturing and what I call electromanufacturing, the use of plasmas or electricity to replace fossil fuels in the manufacturing sector. And then I mentioned also solar radiation management, but I'm sure I'm almost out of time. So I'm going to just say that we are leveraging the strengths that we have in plasma and computational science and in material science. And the goal is to really deepen partnerships, and that's why I'm delighted to be here today, to deepen partnerships both with our own institution, Princeton, but also we have right down the road from us a NOAA lab managed by Princeton that is a world-renowned climate modeling lab, the Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Lab, or GFDL, that we're working with now on this solar radiation management project. And industry, of course, other national labs and other universities, such as the ones represented here. So I'll just mention that we have started now a big effort related to the use of plasmas in developing catalysts and plasma conditions that can produce clean hydrogen from methane, or a combination of methane and CO2, actually doing what's called dry reforming of methane. We also, and so we received last year, we were awarded a grant from the Department of Energy to lead a center in this area. And we also are part of another one of these centers that is focused on using pulsed electrical heating to convert small hydrocarbons to chemical feedstocks, and that's joint also with the Oak Ridge National Lab. We're also doing that kind of work for ammonia synthesis. And I think with that, because I'm sure I should stop, I'll end and be happy to take questions when the time is right.
Great. Thank you. As I said, there's a lot of exciting activity happening at the Princeton University and Princeton Plasma Physics Lab. And now we'd like to hear about some activity from Rutgers, from Deirdre.
Keep going.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Yeah, so my slides, I have a few slides as well. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of material science and engineering at Rutgers University, the department there, some of the research topics, and then I'll talk a little bit about my own experiences in translating our research to practice. So our department, Material Science and Engineering at Rutgers, it's one of the oldest, actually it is probably the oldest MSc Material Science and Engineering departments in the US. We were established in 1902. Currently we have 15 tenure track faculty and about 100 students in total from both our graduate and undergraduate programs. We're very research heavy. We bring in the most research funds of all of our departments within the School of Engineering. So most of our graduate students are funded by federal research grants. And just in the last 10 years, we've produced 88 patents. So we're very much interested in how we can translate and commercialize our research. We have a variety of major research areas in glass and ceramics. Historically, we've been strong in ceramic materials, sustainable materials, batteries, energy storage, and solar energy devices. My own areas are photonics and electronic materials, materials modeling and theory, and biomaterials. Just to highlight a couple of the centers, a few of the centers that are active. One that has a lot of research in upcycling polymers for construction applications. For example, the Advanced Polymer Center, they focus on graphene polymer composites to make bridges and construction materials, and they use waste plastics to do so. We have a Center for Advanced Solid-State Ionics and Energy Storage Research, led by Glenn Amatucci, developing new types of battery materials and for all sorts of energy storage applications. We have a ceramic center, a composite optical materials center, led by Rich Haber, and this center in particular is very active with industry. They bring in industry partners to do research and measurements and collaborations actively. I also co-lead ORU in Advanced Materials. It's where we bring in undergraduate students from around the country to do research in a variety of advanced materials topics, and it's a great pipeline for us into the graduate program to do research in these advanced materials areas. So my own research is in the photonics area. I just want to briefly mention what my group does. I have a couple of my students are here to talk about the details. We focus on developing materials for light-emitting devices as well as plasmonic materials to improve energy efficiency in things like solar cells, LEDs, and lasers. We have commercialization activities that have been funded through the NSF TIP Directorate. In recent years, the NSF I-Core has been invaluable to us to understand the big problems that industry are facing and how our technology could potentially be used to address those. We've also recently had a partnership for innovation proposal where we're doing prototype work to integrate our metasurface materials into OLEDs. And we're also funded through Rutgers through the Tech Advance to help with our commercialization activities, and we're planning to take the leap into a startup very soon. The reason being actually is what we find for the most part that companies that we would like to partner with, they don't really want to partner directly with the university and license their technology directly from the university, as many have said. They're more interested in working with a university-based startup where there's been some de-risking of the technology. So we feel like that's almost something we cannot avoid if we have to take the leap if we want to really get our technology into the market. Some initiatives we're involved in as well that are larger than just what we're doing at Rutgers are particularly Photonics New Jersey. It's a new nonprofit corporation. It was set up in December 2023, although it's been around in more informal situations for the last 2 or 3 years. And it has many people from all of the universities around New Jersey and many of the companies working in photonics. And we're coalescing around different proposals, and we've had some success already, where we're trying to get different universities to collaborate on training of photonics researchers through collaborations, developing curricula like photonics online courses, doing photonics laboratory training at different universities. As well as collaborating on the research and development. And through the Photonics New Jersey, where we have all of our industry players taking advantage of internship opportunities, cooperatives to fund our graduate students, and actually where they can get experience in the companies and hopefully bring that experience back to the research lab. We're also active in the Advancing Photonic Technologies NSF Engines Development Award that's been led by Princeton and Rowan. I'm on the R&D working group, co-leading that. It's been had a number of interesting activities so far, bringing, for example, Thor Labs to all of the different university campuses to give demonstrations in photonics. So this is a great way to bring the companies in. We don't have to worry about IP, but the students get to be exposed to what the company is doing and have a look at some cool demos in photonics. One of the, I know I'm running out of time, but one of the things I want to talk about briefly, you don't have to read this, but in the working group activities, some of the preliminary findings are extremely interesting. We've been assessing the strengths and weaknesses in the state in photonics, and we find we're very strong in optical fiber communications, in particular, the technologies that are driving high-speed internet that we're going to need more and more of as we do more AI and computing and do everything more online, as we know. However, there's a lack of activities in the region and suppliers for the companies. The companies really work at the systems level and the components level. There are a lack of suppliers of the components, the lasers, the photodetectors, the optoelectronic components. And so most of those are outsourced, and obviously that's a huge issue in many material science companies. We are good at making passive optical components, so in New Jersey we have leaders in Thor Labs, Edmund Optics, and so on. And then we have great users of photonic technologies in the pharmaceutical energy industry and clinical research industries. However, when you look at the academia and what we're doing in photonics, we very much have strengths in photonic materials and characterization. And so what we're finding through this working group is there's sort of two parallel universes where the academics are working on developing cool new materials with new properties, cool new characterization techniques. The companies are really good at the systems level, and we're finding it very difficult to find areas for collaboration. And I think one of the main issues is still IP, for sure, but I think we could be doing more in terms of fostering industry-academic collaboration at the state level. One of my colleagues on the working group points to the Ben Franklin program in PA, where they co-fund, I think, companies to work with academics, even in small-scale projects, and it's a way to sort of mingle. But just creating more forums where companies can talk tech with academics is really important. And then I really think more co-ops and experiential learning opportunities, both at the undergraduate and graduate level will get us to academics again, talking more to the companies. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Deidre. I do want to mention tomorrow at the CSIT board meeting, if everything goes as planned, the board is going to approve funding to Rowan for additional dollars to write the Type 2 engines proposal that we believe is going to be coming out sometime later this year. So hopefully that will help attract more federal dollars to New Jersey and help strengthen that photonics collaboration. I'd now like to turn it over to Ed from NJIT to hear from the perspective of this institution.
Hello. So my slides can appear magically?
They will.
Okay. I will talk about some of the work that we do and how, not really about our research, but how I feel it could turn into some translational directions in material science. While I'm waiting for this, our work is on reactive and energetic materials, and mostly all these different materials that we deal with are powders. And that's a class of materials in itself. So I'm hoping that the slides kind of still show up at some point.
They're up on the main screen.
Oh, they are?
They
Okay,
they just appeared.
Okay, perfect. And I can advance.
They should make it there, too. There. You're going to be able to see it. Up there, now you can see it.
Yeah, I can see them here, and they can advance. Okay, great. So yeah, so the applications that we're typically funded to work for are these fuels for propellants and explosives and pyrotechnics, and all of these are powders which are added to all kind of different formulations. But it turns out that the powders are, clearly ubiquitous in industry, and they're used as feedstocks for powder metallurgy, for additive manufacturing, which is quickly gaining ground across the fields. There are all sorts of powders, ceramics and food and pharma and all that kind of thing. And so dealing with powders kind of gives you a perspective on what one can do with them. So as much as we use powders, there are a lot of challenges in using them in different fields. So commonly, we always handle powders. So we have to transfer them from one container to another, and if you liquid, you just pour. In the powders, that's not as simple, and sometimes they don't want to be transferred, they get stuck, they mix with other materials, and then it's just a challenge always to move them. And in specific applications, you often want to combine compositions of different materials, tune their optical or other physical, chemical properties. And finally, you often consolidate and sinter them. And so every kind of material comes with its own type of challenge. And so kind of looking at it broadly, wouldn't it be nice if all the powders look like the glass beads that you see here? So glass beads are beautiful. They're like spherical, they roll, they're easy to handle, they all kind of the same size. It's perfect. The sad thing is we don't get many materials in that form easily. There are some materials we can get which look like that, and they typically made using this atomization process, which is illustrated on the bottom here. So essentially what you do, you heat something to a melt, and then you spray that melt through a nozzle, and then the cooling droplets form these nice spheres. So you can do this with some materials, but if you want to combine materials with different melting points, sometimes you combine things which are not miscible as liquids. Sometimes you need to work with refractory materials. Sometimes you work with the reactive materials as we do, so like having a spray of this reactive particles is kind of a nightmare because it's like a bomb, it's going to explode. So it's difficult. So what we're trying to do here, we have a process which may be leading to a paradigm shift. So we're making spherical powders out of anything using a low temperature, like room temperature process. So the kinds of powders we make are illustrated here. So these happen to be boron powders, and they all done at the same magnifications, the images. So you can see we can tune the size, and there is a patent application in the process. And so it's a material agnostic process. You can take any material as a starting powder or like break it down to small particles and then mill it into these spheres. And the way that it works is that the milling is done, this is kind of illustration here, so we're milling in a container which contains emulsion. So emulsion has these droplets of one liquid into another liquid. And so during milling, we can pack the material inside the droplets. So we have like packed little spherical particles which we then recover. And so this is, like I say, it works. We tested it with any number of things. And every time we get the droplets, and we can tune the size of the droplets by manipulating the emulsion. So you really make smaller emulsion droplets or bigger, and you get bigger or smaller particles, and they're fairly uniform. So this is examples of different things which we have made, but we've made many more. And it goes from, sugar to boron to iron to calcium carbonate to, like I say, it's a material agnostic method. And so my kind of translational thesis here is let's make all the materials into nice spherical powders, and then you can like print and do whatever you want with them. And that's kind of the idea I'm proposing here. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I have to tell you, this morning when I was doing a walk, I was listening to someone who was a budding cookbook author, and one of the comments that was being asked was, well, what kind of salt do you recommend using in the recipe? Is it table salt or kosher salt? Because again, they're different size particles, and they were talking that even the different brands of kosher salt have different shapes, and you might get something that's more salty than something else. So I do see some commercialization potential, because I saw you had sugar as one of your items.
Yeah, we can do salt, no problem.
Perfect. So Govi from InPhase.
Phase change solutions.
Phase.
Thank you. Thanks, Judith. Thanks, Adam. Morning, everyone. I think I'm the only one that's not from academia today, right? So token representation of true translational research. So let's figure out what we can do here. My name's Govi Rao, and I'll talk a little bit about phase change. I'm sure the slides will show up here. I also have my colleague Pallavi Maraksira, who's here, set up marketing. We actually have some material here. You can come stop by and learn more about what we're doing today. And super excited about the Center for Translational Research. I think it's phenomenal. I think we probably will have a first project to launch into it. A couple of things I want to mention. So Ed, sugar and calcium carbonate, right? Love to see if we can do something with it. If maybe we can add some thermal properties into it, because we use sugar or derivatives of sugar as for phase change materials, so polyols and sugar. So it'll be love to see if we can actually use that. You mentioned what emulsion-assisted milling. I think that's a new one for me. So let's hope we can actually work something there. So that Atom, there's another project that we can actually talk about as well. From talking about using technologies to commercialize. So phase change materials. What am I doing here? I live in New Jersey, so I'm part of this network for the past 13, 14 years. The company is based in North Carolina. I guess I can advance these slides here to just show you where we are. Okay. I don't want to talk about practical consideration for advanced materials.
Yeah.
I think my slides are there. I think the right slides, I guess. Can I go back one, or?
The red is the back.
It's not working here, but let's see if it's advancing those slides, not the ones there.
So there are two different slideshows. The slideshow here is not the same as the one that's on the screen, and we want the one that's on the screen to show there so he can advance it.
Yeah, if you can go back, yeah, that's it. Let me start there. So what we do in phase change, if you go back one more slide, let's start talking, and this will catch up here as well. So we are into solving two big problems on the planet, right? We talk about global challenges here. So one is decarbonization. Obviously, everyone's talking about decarbonization. And second one is reducing waste. Waste in pharmaceuticals, waste in food. How many of you have thrown food away from refrigerators because it's temperature, the power failure or the compressor failure? Well, phase change materials can actually completely eliminate that waste. And we're doing that today in places like Israel and the UK, soon to be introduced here in the US as well. We make materials, phase change materials that actually hold temperature, so fundamentally to go after decarbonization and zero waste. The markets we go after, obviously energy efficiency, talk about reducing carbon kilowatt hour usage in buildings like this. Also in transportation, where if you want to drive materials a lot longer, if you've seen delivery trucks in New York idling because they have to keep the temperature, well, it's not all that great, right? So I think LA has passed a law to ban idling when you're delivering food. I think New York is doing it. Huge sink in diesel usage, et cetera. So we can maintain temperatures there, lower diesel usage. That's another one. And then the last but not least is data centers, cold storage places. Anywhere we have use of energy for maintaining temperature, we can actually pay a huge impact. So that's kind of what we do here. Let's see if the slide advances now. Yep, I think it's got up. So coming to materials, and we are a material science company, engineered materials, we heard about that today. What excites me about this is, I think, Emily, you said sins of the past, or Deirdre, I think you said, one of you said sins of the past. It's bringing together the sins of the past and 20th century fiction, science fiction, to create what is 21st century reality today. These are all things that can happen today. The question of translating this research into what we call commercial products, where we actually have people's quality of life that gets better, whether you're saving food, saving pharma, you're lowering carbon usage. These are all fundamental drivers that actually, that's why we do what we do. We get super excited. So as you can see here, we combine naturally available materials. That's why, Ed, I was interested in your contribution to sugar, because we use some of the materials as well. We use engineered materials and additives to make what we call bio-PCM. You can come later and I'll talk to you about more details. I wanted to make this less of a commercial for phase change because we are a materials science company, and you'll see more of it here. I want to talk about why this is so exciting to be here at NJIT and with folks here. I think Deirdre and I talked about blue LEDs and Rutgers, which is, how do you bring this together? So there's tremendous potential to collaborate, right? And we think about it, IP, we talk about IP as a barrier. So what are we competing against? Each other? For what? I don't know. The planet is going down, and then we're talking about IP, right? So it's like we need to figure out how do you change these paradigms. And I think thanks to Atham, the office here, with NJIT, we're beginning to talk about that. Yes, it's important. So at some point, we'll talk about the role of venture capitalists and what they look for. So there are a lot of VCs that are also changing their paradigm of collaborating to make for the better cause, right? So that's why this excites me. This forum excites me significantly. So here's an example, and I won't bore you with all the details. I think Pallavi can talk to you about this later on. From end to end, if you take one example in the food services industry, from the time the food is processed, made, all the way down to the retail store or even your home, we can maintain temperature. It's fungible material. You can make all kinds of form factors with it. So from the manufacturing, in the truck, in the warehouse, and the truck again that gets into the retail, and in the retail stores, in the refrigerators, and in the bags, we can maintain temperature with BioPCM across the board. Some of the examples of the products that you're seeing here is actually a result. And we don't make all the downstream products. We make BioPCM that then enables products that actually can be used in different parts of the value chain, which I think is phenomenal. Take a look at that. So what excites me about this whole concept here about advanced materials, what we talk about the next 20 years, there'll be a humongous leap in going back, surpassing what we've done here in almost a century, right? The two limitations that I'm seeing here is the laws of physics as we understand it today, and I think that's changing to a little bit. Thanks to people like Plasma Labs here in Princeton, but also the role of AI. I think 3 weeks ago, we were back here in NJIT talking about the role of AI. It is fundamentally transforming how we think about materials, period. There's designing materials, characterization of materials, analysis, et cetera. This is going to revolutionize. So we are super excited about it. And here, talking about data science, I think this is one place where we can make it happen, right? So you saw, TechLim talked about it. You think, Fulay talked about that. And Atham, you mentioned that as well. So this is a nexus that's coming together. The faster we get there, the better. So we have to eliminate the barriers of getting there. So let me go back to some of the fundamentals, why this makes sense. I mean, all of you here know SDGs, right? I don't need to give you an education. Anybody here who doesn't know SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals? It's here, you can see it. And one good way, I think this was done by the German government, actually this month, how they look at this, right? If you look at from the bottom, the biosphere, the elements of the biosphere, then you can take a look at the actual society, the economy, and right at the top of it, it's ironical, it's all about collaboration. It's fundamentally driving, and I think the principles are there. We can actually make it happen, and we've done this before. The first of these things, Atham, was based on sustainability and the SDGs. So I implore you to explore this even further. I think this is going to be key for us as we go forward. And then advanced materials, obviously, at the core of this for us. I think I have one more slide to wrap up, Judith. I'm sorry here. Can we get into questions? Okay. Oops. Too fast. Trigger happy. Just a couple of things I just want to wrap up with in here. I think one more, I can go back here. There's a tremendous amount of research that's done, and today, thanks to not just ChatGPT, but even AI and other forums like this, we are able to bring together people to collaborate. So part of it is, how can we do translational research? So Atham, this is one of the forums why we are so excited, even though we're in North Carolina. We want to it's a global effort in here. And that's one of the reasons why I believe forums like this are going to be huge. We have to do something concrete, right? Not the real concrete. Concrete, as in make steps to go forward. We've been here now for 3 years. We've talked about this quite a bit. And I think there's some grants that have been put forward, et cetera. We want to see some real tangible products and solutions come out of this thing. So with that, we'll take questions in here. Judy, thank you so much again.
Thank you, Govi. And now for our last panelist, Chris from Stevens.
Thank you. I've always thought the most interesting part of these panels is the questions and the answers, particularly ones that come from the audience. So I'm not going to wait around for too much here with the slides, and I'm just going to address a couple of topics that I think are interesting in this context in particular. There's already been much made about intellectual property and kind of how interesting it is to get those agreements in place with multiple parties. So I don't want to dwell on that part too much, but it can't be it can't be overstated, how important it is to make sure that everyone's aware of kind of the relationship going into one of these collaborations and coming up with an agreement that works for all parties and that everyone feels like the results are predictable. So since I have the slides here, let me just go forward a couple. Beyond just pure agreements, there's a couple of things that I think are really interesting when you're talking to researchers about translation and helping them to think about how a technology that they're developing can be translated into commercial use. So often they're on the cutting edge of these developments, and the scale they're working at, the way they're approaching their problems are fundamentally different from what may be required from an industry perspective. So I've kind of touched different parts of this process throughout my career. My first job, my first non-science job after graduate school was working for a Fortune 500 specialty chemical company, which only worked with mature technologies. And from there, I worked with a small company that did a lot of early stage research, but still a private company, and so translation was core to what they were doing. And now, for years now, I've worked in academic tech transfer, which is again on the cutting edge of materials development when we're talking about advanced materials. So in order to try and figure out whether a technology can be commercialized, one of the first things I'll try and get at is the scale. If this is a very precious material that's difficult to make, but we're talking about putting it in some sort of mass-produced consumer product, obviously that's something that has to be addressed. Another thing that often isn't considered or that you need to point out is what are the stages of piloting? Making grams of material in a lab is different than making kilograms of material, even in some sort of scaled process, and that in turn, of course, is very different from making metric tons of a substance to be put into a product for further development. So how many different piloting stages, how many different piloting scales does this go through before it ends up in the market? And then I think, as someone else already addressed, another critical aspect is how valuable is the material. Particularly in something like catalysis, you have a lot of precious metals sometimes that are going into a catalytic process, into a catalyst. So how expensive is it to produce? Are there kind of fundamental limitations there? And even beyond that, are there issues with optimization? How difficult is quality control? Just kind of a funny story. One of the early technologies I worked with early in my career was a cathode material for lithium-ion batteries. And so I started talking to a lot of different companies to see, if there would be interest in adopting, this material, this process for producing the cathode material that goes into lithium-ion batteries. When I spoke to one company, though, it really, hammered home this issue of translation that we're talking about. Because they asked what we'd done to optimize the process for the surface area of this material, how much work had we done to develop the optimization of that process at scale. And then they went on to explain that it took them $200 million basically to optimize the process for producing their existing material. So that's a huge issue with translation. It doesn't matter if you can make grams of it. It really matters what that process looks like for ultimately producing it. And then kind of more on the fundamental manufacturing issues. There have been a number of technologies that have crossed my desk that involve graphene, carbon nanotubes. Some of them are really appropriate uses of those materials, but on the other end of the spectrum, a lot of materials that you'd use carbon nanotubes in, for example, you have to be able to separate them by chirality. And so, if you have to produce, for example, metric tons of a material, you need to have some idea of how you're going to scale kind of those basic processes that go into that. I'm rather new at Stevens as the Director of Technology Commercialization, but already I've been really encouraged by the by the just vast amount of innovation that's going on campus. And so there are a few areas that I've become really interested in, that our faculty are working on, in particular. We have one faculty member that's using machine learning to understand metabolic pathways and applying that to a number of different things, both in more conventional advanced material development, but also, in terms of drug development. There's been a lot of discussion of collaboration among institutions and between departments. One area where I've seen that in spades is with regard to a project at Stevens for developing materials that are resistant to infection and treating infection, as it applies to implantable devices. That's something that's really core to the materials that are being used. We have, again, a number of developments in battery technologies, including cathode materials. And several different faculty are actually working with 3D printed scaffolding technologies for tissue engineering, one of which is getting very close to a startup, and so that's very exciting to us. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to questions. Thank you.
So I'd first like to certainly mention to all the academics, to the extent that you do get startup companies, the Commission on Science, Innovation, and Technology has a series of different seed grants and vouchers that we are able to have faculty startups, as long as they're a company, we're able to fund them for some of the work that they're doing. Maybe not quite as generously as some of the Ben Franklin projects that we'll certainly take a look at to see what we might be able to steal, copy, or borrow in terms of additional programs. But we really want to encourage faculty spin-outs, from all of our academic institutions. I know Deirdre talked a little bit, as I said, about the photonics NJ activity. I'd like to hear, about some of the other research collaborations that people have been involved with, perhaps with some of the government labs. Ed, I know perhaps in the past you've been involved with Picatinny Arsenal in some work. How has that been working academics and, large government facilities?
Well, we have worked with Picatinny and with the Navy installations, and we've been doing this for years, and it's not easy. It's hard to work with them, and it's hard to work with them because we have different timelines, different goals, and sometimes different approach to how things are, even though like on the level of PIs, sometimes like really on the same page, but once it comes to actually structuring the program, and then it's just, I don't know, with Picatinny, the major issue I think is bureaucracy of the government operation, and it's like, we've had a collaboration with the Army Research Lab where they had part of funding and we had part of funding, and they had to transfer funds to us so we can buy a piece of equipment for them because they couldn't for the year and a half that the project was. They just could not process a purchase order. So these are, I don't think that this is like very exciting stuff to discuss, but it's something that hurts. We do have a lot of common interests and common ideas. And sometimes I find that similar problem with the industry too. We've had projects with a number of companies, and we've never commercialized anything. We've done a lot of work, and it looks like by the end of the project, everybody's happy, but somehow magically it dissipates in time, and then we wait for the next round, and sometimes there are multiple rounds. So it's not been a very, and you know that we started a company at some point,
Yep.
and we sold it, and I'm very happy not to have it anymore because it's really hard to wear two hats. So I think there's a lot of issues that we're dealing with. I think the challenge is to find, well, aside from bureaucracy, the challenge is to find an approach where we all do what we'd like to do. And like, I know what I like to do. I like to go in my lab and do research. And that's what I like to do. And I'd like to work with people. I really want to see some of our work used, fielded, but I don't want to work on that. I want somebody else working with me on that, and I'm going to work with those people very eagerly, but that's not what I want to do. So combining people, finding these ways of combining, I think that's a challenge for all of us.
Okay, Emily?
I just want to, I really appreciate your remarks because I'm now dealing with government bureaucracy in my current role. And in fact, just started up a working group to overcome a long list of things that I have found are problematic. So that's no one wants to talk about that, as you said. It's sticky, right, as a result. And I do very much appreciate also what you said, which is I think true for most faculty, which is they want to do research. They do feel strongly that they want to have an impact, especially engineering faculty, I would say, are really concerned with that. And I think an interesting possible idea is to think about whether there are ways for the state, whatever, some entity to fund the people at the interstices. And what I mean by that is having some concierge person with technical knowledge, and maybe it's graduate students or postdocs that decide that they would like to serve in such a role and have some mentors. But you need an ecosystem that supports the way in which people who are expert at certain things can continue to do the things that they're expert at and want to do, and yet have people at these interstices that can help do the hard work of making sure things don't fall through the cracks, that cross the so-called overly used valley of death language. So that's an interesting, I think, idea, is to think about, could we fund interns or something like that that would be helping with this ecosystem? Princeton University has, Princeton University is not a good model for most places. They have a lot of money, right? And I'm also representing Princeton University here, so I'm not dissing it, right? Except that it's really not translatable to other places necessarily. But what they have done is to try to help build a supportive ecosystem in terms of putting people in touch with serial entrepreneurs, with people who have a lot of experience starting companies, and getting them in touch with venture capital and all of this stuff that I'm sure we may want to talk about. But it's how can we help all parts of the higher education ecosystem and small startup companies and larger companies that don't want to look at the $200 million that they spent on the cathode optimization and say, no, I'm not going to spend another $200 million on that particular thing, right? So it's a question of how I think the government, federal government, and state governments can potentially come in, and maybe nonprofits or whoever, philanthropists, can come in as sort of, Switzerland-like entities, right? Who don't have a particular vested interest except in this grander goal of advancing societal impact. Might be able to build out ecosystems at these interstices in places that, frankly, can't afford to do it by themselves.
So, Emily, I think this is what Dr. Fuller was talking about, art and then CRT, I think, or CTR, I should say, sorry. Are those two mechanisms that actually literally speak to what the issue is a pace? I mean, it frustrates industry as well, right? So I think this is a great platform to do a PR for CTR.
No, not exactly the PR, but I wanted to address what Dr. Carter said that. So first of all, absolutely agree you need an ecosystem, because everybody in that particular spectrum of translation from lab to market has a very important, critical, and specific role to play. Those are often overlapping in terms of creating the collaborative synergy to move the technology, translation, validation, user acceptance, and the feasibility for commercialization forward, but they are not interchangeable. So going back to what Ed said, yes, the faculty do what they do best in the applied research, fundamental and applied research. But for translational research, what it takes, I will take the old phrase, it takes a village to translate a technology out of the research productivity in the lab in the real world uses over there. I have done that, burned, severely many years before, got frustrated and then re-energized and then found a way to do it. That is a very risky proposition for the academic pathway for a faculty. Why would you do that, right, if you are a faculty? So the main thing, and also for the student, because they have a timeline for their academic accomplishment. They stick to that particular thing, right? So I wanted to say that actually at the end, but if you allow me, I will just do that. One of the things is that we need to understand the specific role to be played in that particular pathway to entrepreneurship and commercialization by different stakeholders. Often, the unfounded fear is that I need to do everything, or I'm responsible for everything, because our culture in the academic has evolved to that particular level of the credibility in promotion, tenure, merit increases, and everything. What did I do? Not what we were able to accomplish. Nobody asked that particular question in there. So PI, how many grants you brought as a PI, how many papers you wrote as a first author, all of that particular thing. So the first thing is, that's why I'm so grateful that finally Congress realized after the pandemic that they need to invest into the translation in order to create that economic impact, and gave $32 billion to NSF, which is 3 times their annual budget, right, to create TIP, right? So the first level of the partnership is to change that particular culture in academic to start thinking about partnership. Because we always think in academia what we do in the lab, what we don't do outside the lab, right? So that's one thing, and that creates the fear of losing the identity, credibility, and whatever the accomplishments are. So we need, that's where we need to make sure that these ecosystems that we develop, and coming back to you, absolutely agree, those particular things have to start with the seed funding. Because if you don't have the seed funding in the ecosystem, then you cannot do that.
But I think you have to have the people.
Yes.
I mean, you have to have these people that are at these intersections.
Yes.
That can essentially be the people that make it so that the faculty member doesn't have to do everything.
Yes. So exactly, going back to what you just mentioned there, that at the Center for Translational Research, we are exactly doing that. We created this and we launched this for 2 years ago. It's called Technology Innovation Translation Acceleration Program. For first round of the funding is $75,000 to get that particular, per project, to get that particular technology, find a partner, and then do the early assessment of the real world user application. Okay, so having said that, with this particular Center for Translational Research and Art Grant and the institutional collaborative funding that we received and the Board of Trustees approved for additional $9 million, we are creating postdoc for the translational research, and we created 10 undergraduate translational research internship that I'm doing for this particular summer as we speak. We also created, and we are going to fund up to 15 collaborative early research translational CERT grants of $25,000 each. So the idea is to bring the postdoc funding and a graduate and undergraduate student funding in those translational research and have them work with the external community. Go out in the field and test that. So that is a win-win situation. So I absolutely agree. We don't have that much of money as Princeton, but whatever we did for about $15 million in play at the CTR and the collaborative research, we started doing that. The second thing, very quickly, I wanted to point out over there that you mentioned the industry coming in over there and the bureaucracy of some of the industry has their own bureaucracy, and government agency has their own bureaucracy. What is slowing down that particular partnership is basically technology readiness level. Because if they don't see the value proposition for the application, they're not going to come onto the board. So that's where the seed grants are very important in order to create the technology readiness level. So there is a value proposition on the table to talk about it. Otherwise, there's nothing much to talk about it, right? And the third thing, which I think Chris would appreciate that, and our friends over here who are from the tech transfer and the NJIT as well would appreciate that. Most of the academic IP policies, as I understand, are very generic. But the perception is that they are very rigid. Mm-hmm. The perception is. So this is unfounded fear, again, along with the culture, that I'm going to lose my identity or intellectual property rights or everything by doing this particular collaboration and a tech transfer. Of course, it is a risky proposition. In there you mentioned, valley of death and all that particular thing. So we need to create the different part of the ecosystem in order to take care of that. But often, people are scared about the unfounded perception that they are going to lose the right. Mm-hmm. Well, the data shows that 90% of the intellectual property is to protect the right to pursue research. It is not going to make any money, right? So why we are so much worried about at the institutional level losing the millions of the dollar which actually have not materialized, and they have very, very low probability to happen. And if it happens like the next Gatorade, even if I get 1% of that, I will be very happy as an institutional leadership. So those are the three things.
Yeah, and I think what I've seen, Adam, is that some academic institutions also set up these kind of front door organizations to kind of serve as the one place where at least both big companies and small companies can have an initial place to contact, and then that individual will know who is the breadth of people at the institution. And the other comment is really, we'll also be able to follow up. Mm-hmm. I mean, I had a conversation yesterday with some people who were saying to me they had a small company who was trying to get some information from one of our academic hospitals. They had been given a name of a clinician to talk to. They reached out, and then the clinician never got back to them. Well, the clinician was probably busy doing what he normally does in terms of his day job. So you need, as you say, that other person who's going to be able to follow up and help get that information. And I also say to people, do not wait a month. I mean, you don't want to be so annoying that you're calling every other day. That might be a little too much, but if you've asked a question, someone said, I'll get back to you, and you haven't heard in a week, it is okay to follow up or to try another channel who was the original connector. And why don't we talk, I know we're running a little bit out.
That's where the interns and postdocs are very important in the ecosystem. But I think that, yes, we are running the time behind the schedule. But if I could request, we can ask a couple of questions from the audience now. Okay, because I don't want the student panel to be waiting. Mike Ehrlich. Yeah.
Sure. So we're all here. I think we all believe in this transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary research, collaboration, translational research. But I think Dr. Dewan has already kind of referred to some of the challenges that we face as faculty trying to figure out actually how to do some of these things. So just full disclosure, I'm a co-PI with Dr. Dewan on the ART grant and the Center for Translational Research. My role, and part of my role, is actually what they call an art ambassador, and which actually tries to fill some of these interstitial categories we're trying to sort of work with the population. I'm also actually the PI for I-Corps here at NJIT, so we actually try to bring in the students to work with the faculty members. So Ed, you basically, your PhD students are probably the ones who are actually going to take this out into the world when you can stay in the lab, and that's really a pretty common model. Mm-hmm. And so what I'd like to, for the people who are in the audience, actually, is a small advertisement that we are going to, we have a series of Propellus programs and programs to do early stage training and really try to start to form those teams. And so keep an eye on your email. We're going to do another one in the month of June. We just finished one actually yesterday. So I just want to kind of say that there are people out here trying to do some of this, but again, to sort of Dr. Dewan's point, nobody's asking about the we, and I would say that the incentive structure does not play to recognition of the work of being, for example, an art ambassador or PI in I-Corps. Those things are not recognized in the promotion, tenure, or merit process in the way we live right now.
Yeah, if I could just say something to that, I would just say that this is a conversation that all higher ed institutions need to have, because the reward structure is really not there for the amount of effort that people put into both what you're doing, which is really important, and when somebody wants to start a startup company, right? So that is a conversation that needs to be had more broadly, and frankly, places like NSF and the Department of Energy, it's not clear that institutions will necessarily listen to them, but they will listen maybe a little bit, so that there could be some pressure be brought to bear, because it should be part of, just like mentoring and teaching. If you're doing this and this is how you're spending your time, that should be allowed to be part of the reward system.
And I think that's where the state can also play a role. So I'm not putting Judith or you on the spot, but I have done
right
that
ahead.
most of the time anyway. I think that the rewards and the recognition of the IHEs within the state is also responsibility of the state government, because we are state-supported institutions. Princeton is also there. You have the money to incentivize it. We don't, as a state-supported institution. So we look for, certain guidance and incentivization to create this culture transformation of the institution of higher education. Because again, it's a collective effort, but we have, at the national level, many of the constituencies and stakeholders which have different kind of constraints, like AAUP or the unions or the other things over there. So you have to work with the different constituencies who have a say in this in order to change what we need to make a change towards promotion, tenure, recognition, and the other, the way we do business, basically, right? Academia, I always say, is a loose enterprise and has probably the biggest inertia into the businesses and the organizational world, because it is supposed to be evolving with the freedom of discovery of new knowledge. But now the times are changing. I think we need to make more accountability.
And Adam, I would also certainly like to mention the NSF Advance Grant that, again, a number of the New Jersey academic institutions are partners on, NJIT, Princeton, Rutgers, Stevens, Rowan, who are, again, we're trying to look at commercialization opportunities and ensuring that we had a really robust pipeline. And one of the topics that does keep coming up is the promotion and tenure.
Yeah, there is
discussion.
Nothing more incentivized, approach than bringing collaborative resources to access to the institutions. And that's why, Judith, I greatly admire your approach of clean energy vouchers, and also the way the state is trying to work on to the AI summit, hub institute, bringing institutions together, or the photonics that is started in there. I think that we need to do a little bit more of these particular efforts so that New Jersey is on the map for its due share, whether it's the semiconductor chips or photonic NSF engines or AI institutes. So,
absolutely.
But we are heading in the right direction.
I was going to say, and stay tuned. I think NIST is going to be coming out with an AI manufacturing institute proposal soon. So stay tuned for how we can, again, as a state, pull together to apply for that.
So if you allow me, I think that's a great note to conclude this panel. So thank you so much. Please join me in thanking. This is the time to introduce our distinguished student panel. The reason that is very, very critical, because we started our perception about research and innovation and translation many, many years ago. So I don't want to give away my age, but it has been 3 decades for me to struggle in that. The future of our society is our students, and they have the leadership role to play in the future, and as the future is evolving at a much faster rate than it has evolved in the past. If you look into the disruptive innovation in the last century and the period between the from the invention of the internet to the invention and the use of the mRNA, you will see that next disruptive innovation is happening sooner, and sooner. Why? Because of the students, because of the next generation who thinks more entrepreneurial way, who thinks more innovative way, and who are the better risk takers than our the older generation. They always are better risk taker. So I think that there was a survey in the NSF art meeting which was done in one of the institutions, and they said that when they polled the students, 63% of the students wanted to be entrepreneur, right? So we sampled some of the student and brought it to you in form of the distinguished student panel, and I'm so grateful that these 4 students are going to enlighten us from their work, what they are doing. And again, it is the nexus. Remember that 3 things that we talked in my opening remarks over there: material and machine learning nexus. That is when this synergy comes together, it just creates a technology explosion for higher societal and economical impact. And we have seen that, and this is going to accelerate. And the third thing is, it is going to accelerate through translation. There's no other way. So even though we perceive the barriers, we need to figure it out how to overcome those barriers in order to create better partnerships, incentivize better partnership, and then find the partners. Well, these students are the future partners. They will create those partnerships faster than we have been able to do, right? So it's my great pleasure to introduce distinguished student panel. Heidi Pacheco, I'm sorry that, is a PhD candidate in material science at Rutgers University, working in optoelectronics. She has a Master of Science degree in Material Science and Engineering from Stanford University and a Bachelor of Science degree in Nanotechnology and Molecular Engineering from Fundación Universidad de las Americas Puebla. Her core competencies include material science, nanofabrication, optoelectronics, organic electronics, and research and development. Please join me in welcoming Heidi to the podium. Sneha Srikumar is a PhD candidate in the Department of Chemistry, Chemical Biology in Rutgers University since 2019. She obtained the MSc in Chemistry in 2019 from University of Hyderabad, India. Her research topics include thin film optoelectronics, OLED fabrication, plasmonics, and nanophotonics. Please join me in welcoming Sneha. Niranjan Haridas Menon obtained his Master of Science in Physics from Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham, India. He's pursuing a PhD in Materials Engineering at the New Jersey Institute of Technology. His doctoral research centers around exploring the influence of porosity on the sensitivity and selectivity of packed microfluidic-based sensor for the development of the novel biological and chemical sensors. Please join me in welcoming Niranjan. The next is Purvam Gandhi is currently pursuing his PhD in Chemical and Material Engineering Department of the New Jersey Institute of Technology and is in 4th year of the program. He holds a Master of Science degree from Chemical Engineering from NJIT. Purvam's research focuses on enhancing the ignition and combustion characteristic of various gas-generating reactive materials. Please join me in welcoming Purvam. This session, I have requested Govi Rao to moderate so that the students can see what the president and the CEO of a company perspective is, an entrepreneurial perspective is. I already introduced Govi, so please, Govi.
I was leaving a spot for you. Whoever was. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. So this is going to be fun and interesting. So you already have the introduction, so distinguished panel. So I'm not going to take up too much time. I think we need to hear from the panelists first and then get into some questions. The format's going to be some time for each of them to present the project. Then we'll get into questions. I'll kind of initiate the questions. Is that okay? So Haiti, you want to go first? Sure. If you can roll up this. I think there's some few slides you want to show as well. I mean, this is a wide range of material science experts. This is super exciting for us to kind of pay attention to. And at the cusp of true translational research, I guess, to commercialization. So, Haiti, take it away.
Oh, can I have that?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Oops.
Green button, yeah.
Yeah, green button.
Big one.
Oh, big green button. So, hello. My slides should be there. I wanted to get a few slides to introduce myself. Over there is me in visiting fancy universities in the U.S. and me below is me in the lab in the clean room most of the time. I wanted to generally the expertise of that I can contribute with for this panel. I work in nanofabrication and also a little bit in organic emitters for OLEDs, which is the project that we've been trying to push, our plasmonic OLED project here with Sneha. But I'm going to leave that to her. Other expertise that I have had through my years, I work in the industry for printing technologies and additive manufacturing technologies. That was before my PhD, so generally now it's all about optical materials and devices. Some other few things that set me up to be part of this panel today. I've been working, I was updating my bio sketch and I realized I've been working for 2 years now on this project of plasmonic OLEDs. We have gathered funding through these 2 years by the ICORPS program and the Tech Advance grant that we recently got to develop these plasmonic OLEDs. And I have also been the Rutgers Innovation Ventures Technology Transfer Fellow 1 year ago, in which you take 1 full year to understand the developing of a technology. You learn how to find people, how to see the whole track of an innovation disclosure until commercialization. And you are part of, you help a licensing manager at Rutgers to work with different technologies and like try to transfer them to commercialization. Then more of my projects. Here are some examples of projects in photonics and optoelectronic devices that I work on. That I think have potential for commercialization. Oops, that should not be there. Oh, this is okay. Well, now that we have this here, let me show you one of the examples, which is like the solar photonics and materials evolution. In this project, I worked for a few years in the past, and I can finally show you like the evolution of materials that happened through these solar cells devices. It's been we started with silicon solar cells, then we moved to the different generations of solar cells like thin films, dye sensitized, and perovskites, as was a big boom. But we really haven't pushed these materials into commercialization. And then our proposal for the plasmonics technologies that we work on is to introduce these plasmonic electrodes into, as well, solar cell devices. Let's see what else is there. since Saneha is going to talk about OLEDs, I decided to talk about what I see in the future of OLEDs, which is not something I work on, but it's for, let's say, some examples of things that will be in the future of OLEDs. And one of the things that we're pushing for OLED technology will be the near-eye displays for virtual reality devices, which I think they have been, we are proposing our technology to be part of these devices, and we are also trying to move a little bit into pure color emissions, in which I work on developing different types of emitters. And lately, on the last part of the slide, there is, for example, some research that I found online regarding the detection of the eye, let's say, emotions or like pupil dilation from the things that we are seeing, that uses the light of an OLED to an OLED and a photodetector in the same device to monitor our eyesight. That's okay. Well, that is me. I have this was a very funny presentation because I thought I had sent something else, but I'm very happy to be here and to talk about recent developments of OLED technology.
Thanks, Eddie. Thank you so much. Yeah, and we'll have time to talk about what you want to talk about really as well. So
yeah, sure.
we'll come back to that in a second. Sneha, you want to take it away? And I think your slides will come on as well in a second.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
It'll show up there momentarily. So there's a little bit of a lag.
It's okay if this works. Okay, I work closely with Heidi actually, so I'll be talking a little bit about what she mentioned. So my work is mostly on developing organic light emitting diodes for like display applications. And so the important thing is that the OLED market currently is valued at about $138 billion. So it is very important. It is a very crucial part of like having really good high quality displays that we use day-to-day lives. And so, a little bit of background about me. I actually started as a very pure chemist, and then I got into this lab and started working on a little bit of photonics, and now I do a bit of everything. I do synthesis, electronics, a lot of nanofabrication and device fabrication, so I think it's very cool and very multidisciplinary. So I mainly my research mainly focuses on developing both conventional OLEDs, which are built on ITO, as well as inverted OLEDs, we're trying to build inverted OLEDs on a silicon backplane. And the idea is to actually avoid using ITO because there's a lot of, ITO is really expensive, as well as a lot of high embodied energy associated with it. So a couple of things we focus on is like developing these inverted electronic devices, as well as improving the light emission from the organic LEDs, as well as improving the blue, the emission of blue component as well. So the biggest,
Yeah, it's moving.
oh yeah, the stability of blue is actually one of the biggest issues that the display industry faces, as you can see from the table. It's that to have a very good OLED device, what we need is a true blue emission, which is about that wavelength 430 to 465, and the stability of these components are very low because of several degradation processes in the mechanism. And so what we're trying to do is actually like improve the stability of blue emission so that we have really good devices. So currently what you can see is that with the current OLED technology, what you have is a burn-in problem, which you can see in the devices there. And so to improve that, what we're hoping to do is incorporate plasmonic nanostructures into these devices. How do I go back? You can go back. Okay. That's okay, yeah. To incorporate plasmonic nanostructures. So this is like a very exciting project that Heidi and I are a part of, and we have a lot of funding for this project through Tech Advances as well as NSF prototyping fundings. I'm very confused. Yeah, and so the idea is to include these plasmonic nanostructures in the OLED fabrication technique, which will improve the light extraction efficiency in these devices, as we've proven before, as well as also also improve the stability of the glow component. So this is a major project that we are working on, and we're hoping to commercialize this. And the second part of it is also that, oh no, sorry. Yeah, second part of it is also, we also do a bunch of fundamental work, so improving charge injection, by which we use a lot of surface modifications and these devices to improve charge injection in different layers, as well as also develop transparent conducting electrodes to replace ITO. And eventually what we're hoping is to have a transparent OLED device which can be used for augmented reality applications. So this is a couple of, these are different kinds of research we do in this lab, and I'm ready to take questions after this.
Great. Thanks, Neha. Thank you. I think we'll come back to some questions, especially looking at displays right here, right? So how you can improve it. Yes. I know you were struggling to see your screen here a few minutes ago. There's some revelation. So let's come back to that later on. Let's move on to Niranjan.
I have some slides. Hoping it will come up soon.
Let's give it a second. And Niranjan, you're part of NJIT here, right? You're doing some work on the bus rail labs. Okay.
So my name is Niranjan. I'm a second-year PhD student at the Chemical and Materials Engineering Department under the supervision of Dr. Sagnik Basre. And I'm working on electrochemical microfluidic point-of-care sensors. So when we talk about point-of-care sensors, we have to talk about the assured criteria that was set up by the WHO in 2006, which says that these point-of-care or use sensors should be affordable, sensitive, specific, user-friendly, rapid and robust, should be equipment-free as far as possible, should be delivered to the target customer base. So as you can see on the right, these are some of the very disruptive POCs, LFA kits that have been deployed, especially with respect to malaria, tuberculosis, and HIV, that has had considerable impact with preventative disease management and diagnosis in places like sub-Saharan Africa. With the combined efforts through the LFA kits in HIV and syphilis, they have also helped address parent-to-child transfer of these diseases. These point-of-care sensors use different kinds of sensing mechanisms like nucleic acid tests, antigen detections, or antibody detection, but each of them have their own pros and cons with respect to the different categories in the assured criteria. While NATs are much less affordable, they are very sensitive and specific when compared to the antibody detection, which have a tendency to detect something it's not, leading to a lot of cases of false positives and false negatives. So what are we doing at the Basre Lab? We at the Basre Lab, or rather my predecessors, have developed the Essence platform, which consists of transducer material that's packed between two interdigitated transducer or microelectrodes. So as you can see here, you have a top electrode and a bottom electrode, and you have the capture material in the center. So you flow the target analyte through the system, and it is captured by the transducer material. And the capture event, or the biorecognition event, in the case of biosensors obviously, is tracked through electrochemical techniques like electrochemical impedance spectroscopy. That was mostly regarding the chemical engineering aspect, but when coming to the selecting the transducer material is where the materials engineering comes into play. For example, we've used functionalized carbon nanotubes for the detection of P53 protein, biomarker for breast cancer, and also for the detection of single-stranded DNA. We've moved on to metal organic frameworks for the detection of perfluoroalkyl substances, and we could modify this in the future for other environmental contaminants. But how are we translating this technology? The primary aspect when you're talking about microfluidics and electrochemistry is bridging the two gaps and minimizing manual intervention, which is why we went for the microfluidic automation system as shown here, which automates the flow throughout the system. And as you can see the schematic for the different setups. And the entire thing is automated on a laptop right now. Using the software that is provided by the company, I agree, but we are moving away from the commercialized software and then switching to a more pocket-based impedance analyzer, which is the more of the work I came in. As you can see on the right, that is a pocket USB impedance analyzer, costs in the range of $200 to $300, which we shifted from the tabletop analyzer, which is in the range of 20 grand. And right now we've used the LabVIEW software to bridge and automate the fluidic platform and the electrochemical impedance analyzer. So it's a one-click process to analyze a sample and then acquire the data. Next step obviously would be moving away from the laptop into an onboard computing system to generate a functional and portable prototype. Where do we go with respect to POCs in the market? We modify the assured criteria to go for a reassured criteria, where you bring in real-time connectivity and ease of specimen collection. And how do we bring research-level tech to the market? We need to talk about molecularly imprinted polymers, and we need to talk about aptamers, and how they can be brought into diagnostics as extremely selective and specific target materials, which could replace standard techniques like LFAs and cause considerable disruption in the market. So I need to acknowledge definitely my supervisor and the Basra Lab members, and also Dr. Atham for giving me the opportunity to talk here. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ranjan. Thank you so much again. Yeah, we'll come back to it, some cutting edge work there. So last one, Purvam, if you want to tell us about what you're doing.
Sure thing.
Also at NJIT, right?
Yes. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Purvam Gandhi, and today I'm going to talk about metal fuels, how we can use metal fuels to generate clean energy. Before I start, I would like to thank Dr. Drazen to accept me as a PhD student. I'm currently in my 4th year, looking to graduate soon. So apart from my clear bias on metal fuels, because that's what my research is on, why do we use metal fuels in the first place? What's so special about them? So in this slide, you can see the energy density of different materials, metal fuels, lithium-ion batteries, some gasoline, some other fossil fuels. And you can see that metal fuels outperform any other materials in terms of energy density. And essentially, energy density is something, is the energy which is required to perform a complete oxidation of a substance or a material. And you can see that there's an order of magnitude greater energy density in metal-based fuels. However, it's not as simple as it sounds, correct? So there is a challenge on how we can select a metal fuel with a specific energy carrier. So we should select the metal fuel which is currently readily available. It produces adequate energy, which we can use in some different applications in oxidation. And it can be easily reduced. So in terms of translating this technology commercially, we can say that metals can be used as recyclable energy carriers. It's a widely known technology in Europe. There are some companies in the US as well which perform this. So what happens here exactly is we use metal fuels, we oxidize them, and then they generate some energy, and we use those energy in either transportation, industry, heat engines, or even in fuel cells. So we can do this in 2 different ways. We can burn our metal fuels in air, and we can produce heat, or we can react them with water, and we can also generate heat as well as hydrogen, which is useful in fuel cells. The next step is the crucial one. We get metal oxides after the oxidation. So instead of using the metal fuels again and again, why don't we recycle these metal oxides and reduce it back to metal fuels? And one way to do it is we use metal fuels that can be reduced from the oxides using a carbon-free or sustainable energy. And we need to make sure that these oxides can be readily transported to the sources. We can use a process like electrolysis to reduce metal oxides to metal fuels. Another potential application, since my research field is in combustion, is metal-fueled combustors. The primary idea is essentially the same. This technology is a way to burn metal fuels while eliminating any carbon dioxide emissions or NOx and making it potentially cleaner method for energy production. So in this method, the chemical energy or the reaction rates are converted into high-grade clean thermal energy. The primary idea or the goal is very similar to what I just discussed in the previous slide. We have metal fuels, and we pass air through it, and they disperse together and form oxides in the metal fuel combustor. We get some energy out of it, and we can use that energy in some applications like residential heating, transportation, industries, something like that. However, there is again the same problem of getting metal oxides. And in most of the applications, people use commercial irregular shaped powders, which are not easy to flow. So is there a possible way we can improve the performance of these metal fuels? Yes, there is. Of course, it's challenging, but there is. So what we can do is we can change the composition of these metal fuels. We can make a composite out of multiple components, and that's where my research comes in play. And we can also make an alloy of desired metal fuels. We can also change either size or morphology. Since my advisor was talking about the spherical shaped composites, I'm also going to mention it a little bit more. So spherical shaped composites are really good in terms of flowability, and they have narrow particle size distribution. So here in this image, in this slide, you can see two SEM images which we prepared. That's the material we prepared at NJIT, which flows very well and can be used in many different types of applications. We use this, or we prepare these materials using emulsion-assisted ball milling technique, where that method is scalable, least expensive than other methods, and the important thing is we prepare our materials at room temperature. So this brings us to the concluding slide, which talks about the benefits and the challenges of this translating this research into commercial applications. Benefits are, of course, we can use metal fuels because they have high energy density. We can get clean energy production, and we can recycle these metal fuels. But it doesn't come easy. There are certain challenges. For example, it's an expensive process. We don't know if we can reach the maximum efficiency of the process, and we also don't know if we can reduce all the metal oxides to the metal fuels. And here you can see the video of the material which we prepared as well at NJIT for different applications. But yeah, thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Varun. Thank you so much. So as you can see, I think you're all in different stages of the project, right? So towards commercialization. So before we open up to the audience here, a couple of comments. One, very impressive. Can't wait to see how this manifests itself in products and solutions, right? So one question I had for you was, I'll get started with this, and then we'll probably open up to the audience as well. Start with you here, Haiti. Why did you get into, what inspired you to get into this field? Because I know you talked a lot about the technology, et cetera. So what made you into this specific field?
Materials or commercialization?
Start with materials, yeah.
Okay, so I guess optical materials, I always wanted and got interested into this type of materials for applications. I'm not sure if it's how close I need to be for, I think here.
Yeah, it's much better.
So I basically actually look for Professor Carol to add me for her PhD group, because I was looking for people that were doing photonics and organic electronics, which is an odd topic to work on. But after I knew who and what I wanted to work on, then it was easy, and the commercialization potential was already there. And then Professor Carol set me up to work on ICAR's program, which was the thing I started with. And yeah, so I guess the topic that passions you first, and then maybe the commercialization. And also, like, I've been working in a startup before. I had been working in a startup, so that was also kind of easy to jump to these kind of things.
So you had your research, but you also worked in a startup.
Before the PhD, I worked at a startup.
Okay.
So that also helped to keep those things in mind.
So to take that forward, are you going to continue that startup mode? Or are you going to switch?
This startup was in a different country and different life. I just like was one of them.
No, I'm saying in the mindset.
Oh, the mindset definitely helps. All of these projects that I've been part of, the iCurbs training, and I've been part of innovation school for the Optica Association. These things help you a lot to not be lazy about this kind of commercialization track, because you can of course research and publish the paper, but maybe this other part requires a little bit more effort. So yeah.
Yeah, just a little bit more effort. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk more about that. Sneha, what about you? What inspired you to get into this field?
So I started my degree in chemistry, and I did a couple of internships where I worked in nanotechnology, like making quantum dots and using it for solar cell applications. So I really got interested into, like, I guess, materials and making materials for like more energy applications. I was really interested in that. And then when I started in this lab, my research was more fundamental, and then I got into the device fabrication side. And then we happened to do the iCarbs, and I think it sort of made me understand doing research like in the right direction. So basically what the industry wants and what, like, sort of connecting what the industry wants and what we were doing in labs. So most of the time when you look at labs at different universities, you're doing a lot of research, but it isn't really like helping anybody. So I kind of wanted to get into that kind of research which makes an impact, I guess. And so yeah, I'm very excited to take our technology, and hopefully it will result into a startup.
So it's good to hear that you are inspired by what the industry wants, as in what society wants. This is to solve a pain, a problem, instead of just publishing papers.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, it's good to know that, because sometimes we see projects and presentations and we miss, why are you doing this again? It seems like routine and rote. It's good to know that, there's inspiration behind why you're doing that. So thank you. That's phenomenal. Thank you so much. Yeah, let's move here, and maybe Niranjan, if you want to talk a little bit. With full disclosure, I know a little bit more about your project, so it's super exciting. So we'd love to hear why you got into it personally.
I think I got into materials engineering because of how grounded it is with industry with respect to daily life. I've never been a fan of blue sky research. I would blame myself because I lack the philosophical acumen to conclude where it goes, but I've always been interested in research that makes an impact, and I felt something in biosensors or in energy storage applications would make that impact to daily life. So.
Good. And then you're very close to making that impact, I guess, right?
Hopefully.
Yeah, so we'll come back to that in questions. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Purvam, how about you?
This started in undergrad. I had an internship, and I was always inclined towards research. And when I did my internship, I was unfortunately not able to go into research lab at that time, but this motivated me to go in that research. And in terms of materials, there are like a lot of different materials where you can use different types of applications. Polymers, metal fuels, anything you name it. So I think that made me work towards the material aspect of it, where I can broaden my scope and go into different aspects of the applications.
Yeah, and you have some big challenges in front of you, right?
There are a lot of challenges. Yes.
Specifically for the project I'm talking about, if you look at, from a cost perspective, yeah, even from the actual from the basic research, I think you have some big challenges. Good.
Well, we are trying to make sure that how can we minimize that? But yeah, it's a long process.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. And as you can see, this is inspiring, by the way, to see you at the cutting edge of research and driving something that would probably change our lives in the future. I want to kind of harp on one of these comments in here, and I'll open up for questions as well. I didn't see much of a outside-in pull in your discussion, which I'm assuming you've done already. For example, organic LEDs, plasmonics. I think Sneha, you mentioned that industry is $1.4 billion. It's several times even bigger if you really take a look at all the sensors that you can tack into it. Do you find challenges in really finding a place for your technology, not knowing the outside market, and how do you solve for that in your project? How do you go in and figure out, does this even make sense? Or do you wait for someone to tell you, hey, here's a problem? Because you start with basic science, correct,
Yes,
in your field?
Yes, I think for us it was actually iCorps because we started with something completely different. It was actually we were trying to get into the lighting market, and then we realized that actually lighting has actually moved away from OLEDs. It's just a very fancy lighting that uses OLEDs. So what the display industry is actually what needs more research. They need a lot of things covered. So I think, and those were things that we could do with our technology. So I think that joining the iCorps actually sort of helped us to sort of figure out where exactly to go.
So is it fair to say that iCore made the link between the
Yes.
core tech and the market need?
Yes.
And maybe even make some pivots there? Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's good to know that. Excellent. Thank you. And what are some of your challenges? I mean, I'll go to you, Purvam. What challenges do you face outside of the cost and stuff? From a working perspective, if you had the magic wand, what would you look for in terms of making progress in your project?
Well, I think, okay, there are a few different things. First is communication, because what the funding agency wants can be a little bit different than what we do as a fundamental science research. We want to know why this happens, but it's not the same case for the funding agency, depending on what type of application you are going for. So I think having a regular discussion and about what they want in terms of practicality is one of the key things we should work on. Apart from that, I think what my research is it's a little bit different than what I just presented today, but it's basically funded by government, so that's a good thing. But again, the application and the fundamental science there's some discrepancies. So we are trying to make sure that we should have as small as discrepancy as possible.
Okay, well, thank you. I just want to run through very quickly one challenge from each one of you. If you could solve, what would it be? I'll go to you.
I think the challenge would be cost, bringing down the cost and using exceptionally selective materials. Like I mentioned, incorporating MIPs or aptamers into commercially available sensors. I think the cost and scale up would be the primary challenge.
Okay, thanks, Niranjan. Thank you. Sneha, how about you? One challenge?
I think for my research primarily, the one thing I keep facing is like access to resources and instruments, and the time it takes to get access to instruments, and also like the cost related with it. It's probably.
So we had communication cost, access to research and instruments,
Yes.
talk about, and resources. Maybe we could communicate better with what's available where. It maybe solve the problem.
It's sometimes hard to find out which instrument is available where, even within New Jersey, I think.
Oh.
Yeah.
Good. That's a good takeaway. Heidi, how about you? One challenge that you can solve?
I would like that the partnerships with companies will be easier to make. For example, we've been trying to work with Edmund Optics and other, mention other names. But the time that it takes between an email and the next email and the next meeting, it's probably, and we have to also involve the university's innovation sector. So it becomes a very loose track on the way, and probably things get lost that you don't follow if you had the time or the effort for it. So yes, that would be.
Okay, so there's, in other words, I think we heard this before, there's some level of bureaucracy that can be.
Some level of bureaucracy.
Yeah, that, I mean, not good, it just is. Process-wise, we need to figure out how to work around it. Well, thank you. That was extremely powerful and compelling to hear what's challenging you, what are the challenges you face. I'm going to ask the audience for 2 questions, because I know we're running short on time. We have time for 2 questions. We can have a roving mic. Any questions for you? Because if you leave me, I'll go on asking questions. Go ahead, Judith. Yeah. Yeah, we have 2 questions.
This is fabulous work. I want to make really a commercial. The New Jersey Economic Development Authority has a program.
It's also being video streamed.
Thank you. The New Jersey Economic Development Authority has a program called Innovation Fellows, which is for first-time entrepreneurs. That second cohort is going to open around early April, and you need a team of 3. So if you're thinking of starting a business around the fabulous technology that you have been working on the New Jersey Innovation Fellows Program is something to apply for because it will provide basically income replacement for you for a team of 3 to start your business. So please take a look at that. And I really appreciate the comments about not being able to figure out where all the equipment is, because that's one of the other things we're trying to figure out, not only for people in academia, but for small companies to be able to access. So thank you.
Thanks, Joe. That's a great concierge service need for people to actually find out
Yeah.
where the research are. So I think we have another, thank you so much again. Another question there. Pallavi, you have a question?
Hi, my name is Pallavi. I work with Govi at Facetune Solutions. So first of all, very, very exciting to hear everything that you guys are working on. Second, I will give you a special shout out because you guys are working on OLEDs and OPV. I got started there, so we should talk. And 3, I guess the question that I'd have is, I think Judith touched on this, you guys touched on it from a challenge perspective. As you look ahead in terms of, you were clearly chosen from a cohort of students who expressed an interest to commercialize, scale, and set up your own entities. So what about starting your own company focused on this effort excites you?
Yeah, anyone if you start, go ahead.
One thing is to see the product, right? The final product of the whole thing. To see my display, I made this, and it's like the thing that I worked on for 2 years plus, or who knows when we're gonna get there. And probably the kind of the people that are doing these kind of efforts across the different technologies, getting to know what they're working on, how they're progressing in their own research or their own products is also nice to hear about, getting to know this network of people, to me.
Great, thank you, it's excellent.
Yes.
Anyone else want to chime in? What excites
Personally,
you?
I wouldn't feel like leading the company myself, but I would rather act in a supporting role where I would do the research. Like Dr. Raisin mentioned, I would rather do the research than focus on commercializing it myself.
Good, excellent. Sneha, anything to add to that?
Oh no, she said it right, perfectly. It's for me, it's more like seeing my work being
End up in a
into-
product.
ending up being a product and seeing it change, I guess, the current industry or whatever. That's what's exciting for me. I would like to have more creative controls rather than somebody else taking our IP and using it. I think that's what it is.
Excellent, excellent. And Purum, I hope we can get to see metal organic innovation from your side at some point.
I hope so too. But so we have developed some experimental setups for very different applications, but it's still in process. So it might take a little while. Yeah. But
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. One more last question. I think Atam has a question here. Go ahead, Atam.
This on?
Yeah, it's on now.
Okay. First of all, congratulations, and thank you so much for a very impressive presentation. And I have a little comment and then a question along with what Pallavi asked you and Govi also asked you, but I want a more formal answer, put a scenario in front of you. First of all, Govi mentioned push-pull relationship. So in the context of the question, I wanted to refine that particular definition a little bit. When you do applied research, that is a push. You know, you assume certain assumptions about the applications, and you see that particular application, and you develop the solution to push that particular solution out in terms of the publication, maybe patent, but that's what your push is, right? And most of you are doing that. The another thing is pull, right? Pull by the use-inspired application. And that's where you need external resources or somebody, you know, in order to help you create that pull for that particular technology to address the unmet solution. So now comes to the question, you are all doing applied research, and maybe two of you are a little bit thinking about the translational research, but it's still in the push direction, right? The question is, if you have and kind of you answered couple of you answered that particular question or hinted to answer that particular answer, that if you have a job lined up and you want to do the research for somebody else, right? Or you have this particular passion to go into the translational validation towards the pull direction, what do you think is stopping you to go into the entrepreneurial pathway? Or the students, if you think about in general, what the student perspective is, that is, they think that this is the biggest barrier for them. What do you need to be convinced to get into the pull rather than push? Does it make sense? The question makes sense? Okay.
I guess for me, I am already convinced of the phone, the microphone. I'm already convinced on the pull on the other direction, but what I think it's missing is let's say the postdoc opportunity, or how the career looks out after we finish this part. We can't. Most of people come into a PhD thinking they're going to do a research life and a professorship or something like this. I guess I was already convinced I was not going to go that way, so I was looking for opportunities, and actually the entrepreneurship part was my opportunity to do something different. And then I guess, like, of course, seeing your own research applied is the other big part.
Yeah, similar to what she said, I also don't want to go into academia, but at the same time, I still want to stay in the research, and I kind of want some control over what kind of research I want to do. So for me, going into an entrepreneurial or startup opportunity is actually a plus point, because I get to do what I want to do.
Yeah. I think you're speaking to an audience that's already the one foot in the door.
These two are there, but there is a difference.
Oh, there's a difference. All right, so
Yeah.
let's talk about it.
Niranjan
Niranjan
said
and Bhuvan, yeah.
No, I think my fear from going into entrepreneurship is the lack of training I have in that field.
Yes.
And also, I have a fear of stability if I'm going into that sector. Especially as an international student, I have a lot of things to consider, especially if I want to consider a career in the industry here. So I think the primary factor would be self-doubt and fear, I guess.
Yes. I thank you for being honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Niranjan here. Being international student has its own challenges. I think the important factor for me would be the risk factor, how calculated risk I can take after joining some industry and moving from industry to some entrepreneurship role. But apart from that, I think money is always a factor. If I'll get enough funding for my investors for my application, so that's pretty much the biggest concern I have right now.
Good.
So I thank you for your honesty and also your enthusiasm. First of all, the thing is that there is no wrong approach over here. If you have entrepreneurial thinking, you have to be convinced and see what is the right time in your life. It is not essential that right after the graduation, you just get into that. I tried, after doing my graduation at IIT Roorkee, the first thing that I did, I turned down a job at the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, and I started my own company. In 6 months, I went flat with 3 of my fellow students. 4 of us started that company, and we went back to ground zero, belly flat. And then we said, okay, we need to go back to the graduate school. And we did that, right? The reason for that was that one of you mentioned lack of training. We didn't have any training. We did not know anything about the business. We had the passion to create the pull, right? But we had no partner from the pull, right? So that is another thing that you didn't mention. In terms of the resources, not only the training, but you need to have a partner. You cannot do entrepreneurship alone. in terms of the resources that are required. That brings back to the earlier comment of the panel, which was 100% right. I said, absolutely, Dr. Carroll mentioned that you need an ecosystem. So this is the question and the challenge to all our faculty colleagues from wherever you are, from which university you are, is to help develop that ecosystem, to create that, opportunity and the platform to have some pull during their students' research experience, whether they are undergraduate or graduate, PhD student, doesn't matter. Just create that opportunity, because you don't have to become entrepreneur the day you graduate. But if you have that particular training and thinking, you will find the right time in your life and the right time of the resources to create that particular pull. That's what is more important for creating leaders of tomorrow in the society for us in institutional, not just looking into what you are going to do tomorrow, what you are capable of doing tomorrow or day after tomorrow or 5 years from now. Because if you have that sense of market pull, guess what? If you work for Govee, you are going to be an incredible asset. You will move his company forward. And their way you are going to learn and build your experience and credibility in order to create your own pull, maybe 5 years from now. And she just mentioned that, she did, before coming to the PhD, right? She started with this startup company. So I want you to think long-term, and I want you to create role model, and this is what I'm saying, that Center for Translational Research is creating 4 different opportunities. And the Center for I'm doing PR.
Are you going to do a commercial now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing.
Go ahead.
So the Center of Translational Research is creating that ecosystem from ideation to the point of the faculty seed grants. This is a very basic and fundamental or a little bit of applied research. Once you do that, that's $10,000 to start doing some ideation and looking into it. And then you can apply, and right now, you have the request for proposal out at NJIT. The deadline, I think, is April 3rd, for collaborative early research translation. You need to find some external partner, and that's it. You could do the early assessment to look into what this technology can do into the market. And so therefore, you need to have some external collaborator, and you get $25,000 per project. If you get their convincing answer, then you can apply to Technology Innovation Translation Acceleration TITA grant. In the first round, you get $75,000. And if you succeed, you can also get now with the NSF funding with the second round of $50,000 plus. And then you are partnering with NJIT to become a candidate in the pipeline for venture studio. That would be the investment of multi-million dollars. So there is an ecosystem, there is a pathway. But in this particular pathway, you get to choose your undergraduate students for the undergraduate translational research fellowship program or internship program, and we will provide you that additional funding, for undergraduate students. Plus, we can also provide you the postdoc support who is going to be working in the field, because to let you work more into the applied, into the push type of the things, and let the postdoc and undergraduate students help you create the pull. So that is something that we would like, and again, it has to come with development of this ecosystem to not only create the pathways to address the current challenges of unmet user-inspired applications needs, but also to create the future leaders who will de-risking and who will be able to create that pathway. Because if they have a good training through this particular ecosystem, they are already a good risk taker. They can move the research translation in much, much faster, much, much accelerated way in the future than we are doing it now.
Thanks,
So that particular note, thank you so much.
Thanks again. A big hand for the panel. And I think you can go to the website. There's a lot of information on the entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
Center for Translation Research.
research.njit.edu/CTR.
And lunch is open, and I think the showcase is next. Is that correct?
Yeah, so two things. The first of all, I want to thank you, the people who have worked so hard in order to make this particular happen, this event happen. Kathleen Pasco is standing over there. Thank you so much, Kathleen, for your tremendous work in bringing all the logistics together to make this happen. And the second person, she just left, Tracy Regan from Stratcom. She is the writer of the press stories. She was here taking the notes, but she's the one, Kathy and Tracy have put together this particular booklet. So just Tracy's not here, but we thank Tracy for doing it. And also, I wanted to thank all the attendees and the participant in the showcase from NJIT, from Princeton, from Rutgers. We are going to break for the lunch, but you don't have to, you can pick up the lunch, you can come back over here, do networking, and then in about 30 minutes, that would be the formal start of the showcase. Please interact as much as possible. As one of you said that this is the networking. We want to know what others are doing. So these opportunities, you may find some solution to your roadblocks that you have been doing in your translational research which somebody else is doing. And that's what the collaboration is the key for the innovation partnership. So I bring it to the closer. I thank you all and have a wonderful networking. Thank you.
Thank you.